Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Thursday evening of intense Porsche Cup racing in the UKSimRacing community's Porsche Cup Season 6, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today, we mark the conclusion of the Belgian doubleheader with rounds 7 and 8 being played out here at the Ardennes Forest circuit, known and loved as Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. Whilst the circuit in its modern rendition, consisting of 19 corners and 4.35 miles of tarmac, may be very different from the circuit that opened in 1921, running all the way through the Ardennes Forest and being a high-speed ring. What has gone to become a much slower circuit by comparison with the average lap time is by no means a lesser circuit when it comes to the change presented. For over the 19 corners, we have a wide variety of corners, straights, elevation changes and inch-wide corner sequences, and every aspect of a car's ability, and indeed that of the driver, will be put to the ultimate test in what is a tantalising track, and one where everybody will be looking to claim glory. But the question is here, who will come away with the major points? We'll be finding that out over the course of tonight's proceedings. As you can see in the background, our drivers are getting themselves set in the final practice session. But before, of course, we come into all the details, a little bit of housekeeping. You're tuning in live via the official UKSimRacing YouTube channel. Indeed, if you go to youtube.com and search for UKSimRacing or UKSR, you can tune in there. And if you are tuning in, be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest broadcasts, including future episodes of the Porsche Cup. Then in the commentary booth, you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and welcome to you all. And it's great to be here, and indeed looking forward to seeing how the racing gets on today. Indeed, as this season continues to wind on, it has been a pleasure to cover what's been the most intense season of racing in the Porsche Cup so far, and it only seems to be becoming higher and higher in terms of the stakes as we go through each and every race. But speaking of the stakes, then let's take a look at the calendar and where all our drivers will continue to rage battle in the championship classes. As we can see, rounds 1 and 2, of course, we started off all the way back on the 23rd of March in the United States of America at the Virginia International Raceway Circuit. And, well, there it was all about the battles at the very front of the field in the gold class in both races. But also, let's not count out the fact that in the silver class, it was a feature race in round number 2 where nobody seemed to want to win. But in the end, we did have to have a winner on circuit, and our drivers took all the momentum through into rounds 3 and 4 in Italy, where at the Monza Grand Prix circuit on the 30th of March, we saw battles into turn 1. We saw some difficult moments at the turn 1 chicane as well, but all of our drivers relatively emerged unscathed and pushed on throughout the entirety of the racing and created some nail-biting racing under braking into the corners, given the propensity for slipstream at Monza. And last week on the 6th of April, it was the Zolder circuit which played host to our drivers, the home of DTM, indeed the home of Porsche Cup racing for that pair of rounds, and we got to see over the 3 chicanes and the short straightaways, the circuit really did present itself one of the key challenges where drivers had to be smart on the brakes and make sure to be as bold as possible. A couple got it wrong, but those who got it right walked away with the major points. And now today, it is the 13th of April. Spa-Francorchamps lies in wait for rounds 7 and 8, after which we'll be taking a mid-season break 1 week before we return for round number 9 on the 27th of April. And that will, of course, be the Le Mans special at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps that's located in France. And it'll be a celebration ahead of the centenary of the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And our drivers there will be looking forward to an extended feature race round, which could definitely turn this championship on its heels. After that, we'll go straight to Silverstone in the United Kingdom, where the Grand Prix circuit will play host to our drivers for rounds 10 and 11 on the 4th of May before our second mid-season break, and then we'll be returning on the 18th of May for the Suzuka Grand Prix circuit in Japan. Rounds 12 and 13 are definitely going to be quite difficult, given the fact the Suzuka circuit, much like the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, is a circuit which brings together all the best elements of racing into a single circuit layout and configuration, and that every aspect of a driver's abilities and a car's characteristics will be put to the ultimate test. And then we bring it all to a close back in France on the 25th of May with the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps in rounds 14 and 15, seeing our drivers conclude the season on their potential high, with the circuit being so tight and narrow. It's all going to be about track position in the season finale, or being very bold undertaking and being daring. Indeed, when all the risks are high, you've got to go all in for those important rewards. As we make our way towards the halfway point of the season, well, let's give you a quick recap of the championship standings. After 6 rounds, started off with our Drivers' Championship, and in particular the Gold Class standings. Well, as we can see here, after 6 of 15 rounds, it's Alex Peregrina from Avantada Racing who leads by 16 points over Philipp Hammer from Team Germany. These two have been the strongest drivers in the field, both setting the pace in the races and indeed in qualifying. But let's not forget the fact that you also do have Haroldas Jotautas from Over Limit Racing in P3, only a further 7 points behind, and it's Jotautas' consistency that has gone well for him and kept him in the hunt of the top 2, albeit he is starting to fall away a little bit, and his target will be to try and get one up on his competition and potentially add add another win to his tally today. Conversely, for Philipp Hammer, it's all about making sure that Peregrina does not break away, with Peregrina starting to make an advantage for himself, and Hammer wants to make sure that is compressed back in as soon as possible. But outside the top three, the battle is on for P4, with Karen Willesey for Willesey Racing on 56 points, 10 points clear of Indian Motorsport's Heckel Gestad, and then we do have Emil Koopmans on 30 points, leading the rest of the field in P6 downwards with only a 4-point advantage over Ryan Walker, the Satellite Racing driver, nipping at the heels of the Apex Business driver, and you could argue that Walker's perhaps had the greatest misfortune of all the drivers in the gold class, with a good number of results going to waste, and given an instance late on where he's made critical mistakes, but he'll be looking to try and turn around that run of bad luck and improve it into some good luck. And here's Ricardo Jimenez for Avatar Racing P8 ahead of Phillips GP's Giles Phillips, and Corey Lazarus for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand completed the top 10 on 8 points. Behind him, best of the rest is Lee Holmes for ATEC Racing Purple, albeit the gap between him and Alexander Wilfer is only on position in terms of finishing position, as both drivers are 7 points there, and the Team Germany driver behind based on those finishing positions and result countback. In P13, we have Samuel K. Sproul for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand, much like Corey Lazarus, looking to try and gain a little bit more ground in the championship, albeit a bit further back compared to his teammates. And then Rob Selby, Chris Cole and Joe Newman complete our standings for the Shell V-Power race team at DC Sim Racing and Empire Motorsport respectively. As we then come on to the silver class, meanwhile, we can see here the complexion at the top of the standings is very different. Roxanne Marshall leads the way for 24-hour punty people, and much like our gold championship leader last time out who picked up a double win, well, Marshall did the same in the silver class at the Zolder circuit, and the 24-hour punty people driver now has an advantage of 29 points over DC Sim Racing's David Biggerdite there in P2. Of course, the differential here being that Marshall really has had the consistency to go with the pace, and whilst Biggerdite and also Alistair Hatcher and Wayne Basson have all shown great pace, the consistency has somewhat eluded them in terms of the output of the race results, and that's why the gap has grown. And for those three, in P2 through to P4, it's all going to be out trying to hunt down the championship leader today, or will Marshall be able to make a way further away and gain a firmer advantage as we head towards that mid-season break. Meanwhile, outside what is the top four, we have in P5 Lewis Willesey for Tresla Motorsport, who are only 1 point off of the top four, looking to try and charge on in. And indeed, we can see the theme there, how close it is inside the top 10, with Jack Ward in P6 for Willesey Racing only a further point behind the top 5. And there's a 5-point gap to Steve Hobbs for FR20 Sim Racing. Definitely one to watch out for given his pace, alongside Sean Doby, who on 21 points in P8 is only ahead of Luke Andrews based on result countback. Now, of course, Luke Andrews, when he made his debut at Monza 2 weeks ago, the FR20 Sim Racing Purple driver looked absolutely ferocious, and I think Sean Doby from Clicks Racing will be aware of that, and that Andrews will be looking to try and bite his way into the top 5, albeit then in P10 we have Craig Shield completed the top 10 for ATEC Racing Team Sion on 17 points, and he's too clear of best of the rest driver from HW Racing, Sean Cranley Swash. Craig Tillerston for FR20 Sim Racing, currently outside the top 10 in P12, and hoping results do go his way today, but he has a point advantage over both Liam Whittingham and Aaron Tressler, with them completed the run to P14, and it's Glenn Humberstone, Jason Mumford, Jack Isherwood, Chris Eddersford, Steve Kershaw and Tony Bradley complete the top 20, and last but not least Joe Pinder for Indian Motorsports in P21 on -2 points due to penalties. But as we then come on to our team standings, we can see here that it's Avatar Racing who lead the way by an advantage that is now extended to 23 points over Team Germany, but again the top team are starting to break away, and it's Team Germany's responsibility to try and reel them back in, and Over Limit Racing and Willesey Racing are keeping close on 72 and 68 points respectively. We then have a sizable gap down to P5, the gap now standing at what is there, 55 points to Satellite Racing. In fact, incorrect mathematics there, 45 points, and Satellite Racing right now leading the best of the rest in the hunt to try and hunt down the top 4, with Blackout Motorsport New Zealand in P6 ahead of FR20 Sim Racing, and then 24-hour punts people ATEC Racing Team Sion and Phillips GP who complete the top 10. Best of the rest, HW Racing on 5 points, only ahead of ATEC Racing Team Purple based on result countback, and then Shell V-Power Race Team, Tresla Motorsport and DC Sim Racing who complete the top 15, with Night and Day Racing in P16 holding off Clicks Racing based on results so far, and it's FR20 Sim Racing Purple, Empire Motorsport, UKSimRacing and Indian Motorsports who complete the team's championship standings. But coming from our standings then, let's talk a little bit about our circuit for today, and it is none other than the Grand Prix pit lane layout of the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, located in Stavelot in the region of Liège in Belgium. This circuit needs no introduction given its popularity around the world. Indeed, this circuit has played host to most, if not all, major international motorsporting series, including Formula 1, the FIA World Endurance Championship and the Intercontinental GT Challenge Championship. And the key thing about this circuit is it has a little bit of everything. thing. And as our drivers make the way down the start-finish straight towards turn number 1 at La Source, they'll find themselves breaking the way into an opening hairpin where they'll see themselves come all the way down to first gear, potentially second if they're looking for stability. And as they power their way on out, it's a flat-out run through the kink and up towards Eau Rouge and Radion. The two corners that go together to create one of the most threatening sequences of corners in motorsport, with a major elevation change and blind apex as our drivers charge on in, but they'll look to carry as much speed as possible up the hill through Eau Rouge and into Radion and over the crest of turn number 4 and power their way onto the Kemmel Straight. Flat out all the way down towards Le Combe, the chicane at turns 5 and 6. They'll go hard on the brakes and make their way through the aforementioned corners before heading out to turn number 7 and into the braking zone for Rivage at turn number 8. An off-camber, downhill braking zone followed up by a corner that winds its way down a slope, and as our drivers make their way out of Rivage, they'll need to set themselves up for Jackie Hicks corner, previously known as No Name, before heading out to turn 9 and into Pouan at turns 10 and 11. Pouan is a corner that's all about confidence and the ability to carry speed downhill, and another off-camber corner. They get it right, and our drivers will carry all the momentum down towards the Fangers chicane at turns 12 and 13. A medium speed chicane a little bit faster compared to Le Combe, and as they make their way in towards turns 14 and 15, the double right complex known as Stavelot 1 and Stavelot 2, or Stavelot and Curve Pulveria, well, they'll make their way through the double right-hander and look to get the best possible exit out of 15 to go onto the back straight, through the kink of 16, and then into the one corner that sends a heart buzzing, and that is Blanchimont. The left-hander, which in some classes of machinery is flat out. For our Porsche Cup drivers, I think there is going to be a lift into Blanchimont, but as they come through turn number 17, it's going to be about every mile an hour that counts, as they then carry that speed down towards the bus stop chicane that turns 18 and 19, the two slowest corners on the circuit, and exiting there, they'll go around again for another lap. And thank you to iRacing, of course, for their wonderful circuit maps and their brilliant simulator. And as we look to our rules before we go racing, of course, we must always have rules. Let's just remind you that qualifying is a lone qualifying format, whereby all our drivers will take to an isolated instance of the circuit where they'll be able to put in their laps, and they'll have 8 minutes to set their best possible time. We have no overtime in qualifying, so as soon as the clock strikes 8 minutes, that's their lot, and our drivers will be taken to the grid for our first race of the day. And in terms of the races shall both commence via a standing start, as is the tradition of the Porsche Cup, with the sprint race grid being set based on results of qualifying, and the feature race grid being a partial reverse grid based on the results of the sprint race with the top 8 positions inverted. What that means in layman's terms is the winner of the sprint race will start P8 on the grid for the feature, and we work our way down to the 8th place finisher in the sprint race, who starts on pole for the purposes of the feature race, and in 9th place finishers and downwards in the sprint race. Well, you guessed it, that's exactly what we'll be starting on the grid for the feature race. Now, in terms of pit stops, there are no mandatory pit stop requirements in either of the races. Indeed, we're not expecting our drivers to come into the pits in either of them. They will have the fuel tanks to go to the end, so long as they fuel up the car sufficiently, and there will be one fast repair available in each race should they need to come into the pits for damage, and the driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 14 or more instant points in a given race. But that's enough rules and regulations, everything in between. You're all here for the race, and as we turn to our live pictures once again, well, let's take you through our schedule for tonight. Times in British Summer Time, that's BST, or Universal Coordinated Time +1 at UTC +1. And we can see in it's just under 3 minutes time, we'll be heading into our qualifying session, 8 minutes in duration at 8 o'clock, and then transition immediately to our first race. The round 7 sprint will kick off at approximately 10 past 8, and that'll be 12 minutes in duration before we take a brief breather and return just before 8:30 for the 30-minute feature in round number 8. And 2.5 times the duration, where it is going to be a test on the tyres and driver stamina just as much as it is outright pace. But as our drivers get set to go, well, we do look to our gold champion at the moment in terms of our championship leader, not defending champion, of course, given the fact that it's Philipp Hammer who's defending champion for Team Germany, but Alex Peregrina right now looking to try and usurp the reigning champion, and where it's very close between the two of them in this final practice warm-up session, with there only being 400s between himself and Hammer currently, based on the time and on the left-hand side of your screen. Of course, how much can we read into the practice times? Well, I think we can use them as a bit of a gauge here, given the fact that Peregrina and Hammer have pushed one another incredibly hard this season so far, and well, it does look as though Hammer may just have a very slight edge. But as we do look to Philipp Hammer in return, the Team Germany driver in the number 1 car, making his way down towards turn number 8 into Rivage, and we're looking very smooth here as he comes through the long right-hander, and his target will be to win today. He'll want both wins on the cards, so that way he can start to circumvent the momentum that Peregrina has built up. But it's not just about the battle at the top of the gold class, of course, as we look to 24-hour punch bills, Roxanne Marshall and the Briton looking to carry on that momentum after the double win at Zolder, and can actually in the number 26 car fly high and make sure this championship starts wants to move out of the clutches of any other drivers, given the fact that Marshall really has been the one to beat since the start of the season, well, it is going to be a major challenge. But when you imagine that Jack Ward right now, the fastest in this practice session in the silver class by a good number of attempts there, in fact 2 tenths versus Marshall, well, could this be the day that Jack Ward for Willesee Racing finds his way to the top step of the podium for the first time this season in one of our races? Well, time will only tell, as we do say hello to a good number of you in the YouTube chat, including Billy Bob Empire Racing and Nathan Scott there. Good evening to you guys. I hope you're both doing well. And if you are tuning in right now and you haven't said hi, don't be shy. Feel free to say hi. We're all welcome here at UKSimRacing. That's what it's all about. We all enjoy the racing. We may be a little bit hard on circuit one. I'm a bit elbows out every so often, but great respect within the pad. There's no question about it. And that extends to, of course, you spectators at home tuning in right now. And make sure you get yourself a nice warm beverage or a cool one if you've had a hot day, for the simple reason when we get underway, there's not going to be much time to get a break away. But whilst we are shortly going into this qualifying session, we do have an opportunity just to quickly remind you. Now, if you've been tuning into UKSimRacing for some time, and if you've ever wondered how you may be able to give back to or support UKSimRacing, did you know there is a quick way to do so via our affiliates? Well, UKSimRacing is affiliated with multiple sim racing and real-world motorsport companies, including Zolder Sim Racing Coaching and Demon Tweaks. And if you do head to our website, that's uksimracing.co.uk today, and you'll see our website pop up on screen here. Well, there's not at the moment an affiliates page which talks about all of our affiliates, but what we do have at the moment is a Discord button in the top right corner of your screen, whereby if you do click on that, you'll be taken to our official Discord. And well, why would you want to join our Discord? Well, it's not just about our affiliates. If you ever want to take part in any of our races in terms of our series, you do need to be a member of the UKSimRacing Discord, and in doing so you can immediately join, and you've got that requirement ticked off. But also on our Discord, we do have some discount codes from our affiliates, and they're only available in our Discord. So in return, once you use one of those discount codes in one of your purchases with our affiliates, it results in a discount for you, and we at UKSimRacing get a kickback. And because we are a non-profit organisation, all of our affiliate earnings shall be invested back into the community to fund future series, including future editions of the Porsche Cup, the GT3 Loop that's also ongoing currently on Sundays, and we've got plenty more planned for 2023. So do remember, a little purchase could go a long way in supporting UKSimRacing. But I can tell you one thing that's going to go a very long way today, and that is a strong qualifying lap here at Spa-Francorchamps. And as we return to live pictures, qualifying is now underway, and indeed we've only got 7 minutes left of the qualifying session. Our drivers all on their out laps currently, so they are going to have to take some time here to get themselves all set and comfortable before they go hunting for those lap times. And well, what does it take to deliver a good lap at Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps? Well, I would argue, in my experience, it's all about being one with the car. This is a circuit where you can set the car up in a number of ways to achieve the desired outcome. If you invest heavily in downforce, you'll gain a lot in the middle portion of the lap, where there's a lot more corners. And when I say the middle portion, particularly coming into Les Combes at turn number 5, all the way to the conclusion of Stavelot 2 at turn number 15, or Code de Paul Ferrier. Conversely, if you're running a lot of downforce, you lose out on the straights, particularly the run through Rouge and Radion onto the Kemmel Straight, and also in the charge to Blanchimont and the bus stop chicane. At the opposite end, if you don't use enough rear wing, you'll gain a lot on the straights, but you lose out considerably in the middle portion of the circuit. So you really need to come to the circuit with a setup that works for you as the driver, rather than there being one optimum way to go about it. And then just rehearse the circuit, feel comfortable in the circuit, and that way you'll be able to nail it. And as we do look to Tony Bradley making his way out of Stavelot 2, using all the width of the circuit there. They're permitted to run 2 wheels beyond the exit curbing, so as they keep 2 wheels within the white lines. And as he makes his way in towards Blanchimont corner, we're looking at Fast and Ferocious here as he heads towards the timing line. And we say hello to Joe Ray in the YouTube chat there. And what we also say hello to is some onboard footage from Lee Holmes. He makes his way down towards the bus stop chicane, and we jump aboard for a reference lap with the number 35 driver. So making his way out to the final corner and up towards turn number 1 he goes onto his first line lap. They're only going to get a couple here, and as he heads on down towards the braking zone, build his way up to 5th gear before braking at the 100 metres on his left hand side, all the way down to 1st gear as he clips the apex curve and immediately gets back on the power, loads the preload differential on the rear left tyre and absolutely hammers it out the corner now, keeping the car as far over to the right as possible, shortening the run through the kink. Now into turns 2, 3 and 42, Rouge and Radiant, and hold your breath. little bit of a lift there, but staying in 6th gear and maintaining an entry speed of 149 miles an hour and only dropping to 143 miles an hour at the apex of the rouge. And as he powers his way down the Kemple straight in top gear, 6th gear all the way here, hitting 163 miles an hour by the time he goes onto the brakes into Lake On, braking at the start of the entry curve and coming on through the right into left to turns 5 and 6, bouncing in 3rd gear, brings to go to left to size up the run into turn number 7, holds 3rd gear on a lift as he makes his way down towards Garage corner turn number 8, braking as late as he dares, 100 metres of corner 8, as you can see winding on downhill, got to be patient with the throttle and then get back on the throttle as soon as he feels the nose biting up, second up into 3rd, into No Name, and as he comes through the left hand at turn at number 9, now heading down towards 10-11, in towards Phil and he goes. This is going to be a test of confidence here as he looks to his right hand side for his brake marker, a braking at the 50 board down to 4th gear, hold the speed, drops to 3rd, in fact not comfortable the way the car's rotated through 10, and therefore that drop in the gear is going to cost him a little bit of time, but he'll feel as though he'll be able to make amends on the next lap and braking his way now down into the Fangio chicane at turns 12 and 13, through the right into left. You really need to straight line between the two apexes and ride the curves respectively. He does it very nicely, does Holmeston, as he comes into Stavelot 1, down to 3rd gear, nice and high in the apex curve, lets the car flow, use the width of the circuit, open up Stavelot 2, and this way he can go almost full throttle on entry and carry it all the way through as he now makes his way down the back straight and up towards Blanchemont corner, heading into 6th gear here, and let's just listen in, is there going to be a lift at turn 17? Slight lift, but not too much one, dropping to 152 miles an hour at corner apex, and now onto the brakes, the 150 metre board for the bus stop chicane, dropping all the way down to 1st gear, 43 miles an hour at the 1st apex, and it's 37 miles an hour at the 2nd apex, comes on through to the timeline here, and it's a nice lap from Holmes, a couple of areas where he'll know he can improve as he crosses the line. What's it going to be for his first lap of the board? It's a 2:20.685, where it's going to put in P7 overall out of the 9 drivers who put lap times in. With 32 drivers in attendance, we've got plenty more times to go, and indeed with that in mind, who else is going to put themselves right up there is the big question. Well, right now it is Alex Peregrina who goes for original pole on a 2:18.362. My good lord, that is 7 tenths faster than what anybody else has been able to achieve, and they're only going to have one more lap here, given we've only got 2.5 minutes of qualifying left, and what anybody who's yet to get an initial lap in, they're only going to get the one, given the fact they're running out of time. Samuel Case Brown moves up to P2 on an 18.933, so we've got 2 drivers in the 18s now, but everyone else in the 19s or higher. Meanwhile, in the silver class, it's Roxanne Marshall currently, who on was a 2:19.88. Looking fast, but only ahead of where's Luke Andrews there by 500ths, if that. Well, between Andrews and Marshall is extremely close at this time. I would say that Andrews right now may feel as though he's got the measure of the championship leader, but still, as we then look a little bit further down the order, we've yet to see a laps come on in from Sean Cranley Swash, as in fact he goes on to a lap, but he's not going to have enough time to actually get a valid lap on the board. What about Philipp Hammer meanwhile? Hammer's yet to get a time in, and well, he'll have enough time to finish this one, but he's leaving it all to very late in the day. And for Hammer, well, if he doesn't get a valid lap, that means he'll be starting effectively down on the final couple rows of the grid, and that is not good news for his championship aspirations, and particularly now as points are starting to become ever more pivotal. But meanwhile, we can see there from Nathan Scott saying that Joe Newman at the sharp end, and indeed Joe Newman from Empire Motorsport currently P5, 1 second off of Peregrina's time, and Will Newman doing everything right as he drifts his way there, coming out of the Fangio chicane. Got to be careful of that oversteer, of course, it can catch the car out with these Porsche Cup machines running 510 horsepower through the 6-cylinder engines, and with it being mid-engine rear-wheel drive, that means the car's very prone to oversteer at the best of times, particularly in low to medium speed corners. But as he makes his way down towards Blanchemont here, Will Newman will be thinking, has he improved this time? That'll be the challenge, and I can tell you right now, he has improved in subsectors 1 and 2, but not quite in subsector 3. Subsector 4, we're about to find out whether he's improved there, and in fact he has not, and now heading in towards the final 2 corners. Will it be an improvement over the entire lap as Cameron Willis improves? But we can see Newman loses the rear under brake in there, and that's his qualifying session done and dusted. Meanwhile, Heckel Gestad comes to the timeline, and well, can he improve as Jotautas moves up to P2, but nobody can touch Peregrina. Gestad goes P2 on a 2:18.876. There's still time out there. Peregrina improves to a 2:18.8. 18.079. Good lord, he is absolutely pumping in these lap times. That's 8/10 faster, and Hammer does cross the line in the end. He leaves it to last, but he goes P2 on a 2:18.333. 9, that's the only lap he's going to get, but it's the most pivotal one in the fact he's put himself on the front row alongside Peregrina. Meanwhile, in the silver class, it is Luke Andrews P11 currently, who I think will take pole position as Steve Kershaw makes his way down the Kemmel Straight. He'll not have enough time to finish the lap, so it's Peregrina over on gold pole, and it is going to be Andrews P11 on silver pole. But now we head to the grid for our first race of the day. It's the round 7 sprint. So, as we get ready to go racing in round 7 of the Porsche Cup Season 6 as hosted by UKSimRacing on iRacing, Alex Peregrina takes pole position for Avatar Racing by 2.5 tenths over Team Germany's Philipp Hammer. On row number 2 is Corey Lazarus from Blackout Motorsport New Zealand, who is joined by Ignition Motorsports' Hirkon Gustad. And on row number 3 is Haroldas Jotautas, the Lithuanian from Overlimit Racing, being joined by Samuel K. Sproul from Blackout Motorsport New Zealand. On row number 4, it's Apex Mrs. Emil Koopmans, who is joined by Joe Newman from Empire Motorsport, with row 5 going to the pair of Cameron Willisey from Willisey Racing and Avatar Racing's Ricardo Jimenez. Then outside the top 10, taking at silver pole in P11 on the 6th row, it's FR20 Sim Racing Purple's Luke Andrews, who is joined there by Giles Phillips and Phillips GP. On row number 7 behind them, Roxanne Marshall, the Silver Championship leader, taking P13, joined by Willisey Racing's Jack Ward, and the 24-hour Punty People driver will look to have a clean start into turn 1, with Shell V-Power Race Team's Rob Selby being joined by Satellite Racing's Ryan Walcott on row number 8 behind. On row number 9, it's DC Sim Racing's David Biggerdike, joined by Chris Cole from DC Sim Racing, his teammate in the other class. And then we see Jack Isherwood, the privateer, rounded off the top 20 alongside ATEC Tech Racing Purple's Glenn Humberstone. On row number 11, we have Lee Holmes at ATEC Tech Racing Team Purple, joined by Tony Bradley, and the privateers followed up on row number 12 by the combination of Night and Day Racing Steve Kershaw and Lewis Willisey from Tresla Motorsport. And then on row number 13, it's Alexander Wilfert from Team Germany and Wayne Basson from FR20 Sim Racing, followed up by Craig Shield for ATEC Tech Racing Team Cyan and Clicks Racing Sean Doby. Completing the top 30, HW Racing Sean Cranley Swash and Aaron Tressler for Tresla Motorsport. And it's Joe Pinder and Jason Mumford on the 16th row, and Alistair Hatcher on the final row of the grid, starting P33. But all the order is set, ladies and gentlemen, as our drivers get ready to go. Well, we are now only seconds away from our first race of the day getting underway. We have the gridding process complete. Now we'll wait the lights. 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for race 1 of the day as Alex Peregrina looks to get a good start into turn number 1. Immediately cuts across the cover of Hammer, but Hammer immediately goes back to the inside here looking for the brakes into the opening corner. Can he find it? He darts the inside into the source, and I think this may be the source of success as he gets a nose ahead. It's too wide as they make the way through the kink and head up towards Uruja Radio. Cold tyres this time around. Who's going to be the bolder of the two? Hammer's going to be on the inside for the turn-in, but he's not able to hold it as Peregrina goes outside to inside, and Peregrina retakes the lead as they make the way into the Kemmel Straight. But is this tactical from Hammer, given the fact that now it's a long run down the straight and he'll be thinking about carrying all the momentum on through? And immediately Hammer looking for the inside here, as behind we can see Corey Lazarus trying to make it 3 wide, and they're going to go 3 wide on the break in here into Lacombe. Onto the anchors they go, Lazarus on the inside, Hammer backs out there, not wanting to risk it all as they make the way through turns 5 and 6, and Peregrina holds the lead as Lazarus jumps into P2. Smart driving there from New Zealand, and now try and carry the speed on down towards Ravage and go hunting after the race leader. But meanwhile behind, Heckel Gustad looking around the outside into Ravage versus Hammer. I don't think he's going to be able to find it, or is he, as they come on through, and Hammer having a slow start to this race after what was quite an aggressive run to turn number 1. I think he's playing the long game here in the 12 minutes as they come through No Name. And coming on through No Name or X, depending on your preference. We can see everybody behind now starting to calm it down a little bit. Joe Newman gaining 1 place at the start, Cameron Willisey as well, and Giles Phillips gaining 3 overall as the Phillips GP driver makes his way down through Put-on Corner, looking very composed and calm here as he heads up towards the Vantage Chicane. Meanwhile, further back we can tell you that in the silver class, it's Luke Andrews who continues to lead, but meanwhile, cameraman looks the battle there between Jack Isherwood and Ryan Walker, and Walker gaining 2 places off the line and trying to hold Isherwood at bay, as right now the gold driver fended off the silver, who's running P3 in the silver class, and behind Rob Selby and David Biggerdike also exchanging blows across classes, as it does look as though we've got quite the intermingling between the silvers and the golds in what is the run from P11 through to P20. As they make the way through Stavelot 1 and into Stavelot 2, they'll calm down for a brief moment, and we look back to Giles Phillips as he makes his way up towards Blancheville Corner. He's got the pressure of Emil Koopmans, the biggest loser outside the top 10, losing 3 places in class and off the line overall. And as they make their way into Blancheville, no change there. Phillips holds on to P9 for now, but you can see that all the drivers run as deep as they can, and as they come down towards the braking zone here, the turn at number 18, we've got Philipp Hammer dropping further and further on down. I think he's picked up a slowdown for running wide, coming out of Blanchimont corner, and a little bit of a wobble there and a slide, and Hammer really struggling as right now they go 4 wide for a brief moment in the run down towards turn number 1. On the inside, that's Cameron Willisey. In the middle, that's Jotautas. On the outside, it's Sproul. Hammer falls behind, and as they make their way into La Source, well, Jotautas goes all in on the brakes, gets it done. We've got a car around there, and that's Corey Lazarus. Well, one of the Black Hammer New Zealand drivers gains, the other one loses out, and right now it's Sproul who's gaining at the expense of his team as they make their way up the hill once again, charging on through Aruja and Radion, and Jotautas right now continuing to make progress little by little and very bold as he goes. But as he makes his way down to the Kemble Straight, it's going to be close, and he comes down towards the braking zone. You see Willisey there trying to wobble and weave behind as they make their way into the brakes here for Lecom, and well, he's going to look round the outside. We've got an instant further back, we've got a car sliding wide. We're not quite sure who that is. I believe it's Glenn Humberstone who's lost it coming onto the Kemble Straight, but meanwhile Willisey goes outside to inside. Jotautas still on the inside into turn number 7, but Willisey will cut off his nose, and Cameron Willisey comes on through to move on to the podium. As they make their way down towards the large corner, you can see Jotautas defending now versus Brown. Meanwhile, further behind, it's 3 wide on the braking, and Hammer lose out again versus Newman and Phillips as they make their way through Rivage. And Willisey's all the battle inside the top 10. We have got other drivers further down the field we need to get to as well at some point, but Luke Andrews right now up to P9, your silver leader. Well, he's going hunting after Hammer, and he's looking to potentially finish inside that top 8 to get himself onto the reverse grid pole. We need to go take on the ultimate driver of Hammer as he makes his way down through Bourne corner, but those opportunities may come in due course. But meanwhile, whilst they battle on, further back here we can see Joe Pinder on the inside of Sean Cranley Swash under braking into Bourne. This is the battle for P23, and as they come through the left-hander for them, it's the battle for P10 in the silver class. Key points up for grabs, and we hear that Lazarus, Koopmans and Will Furt are all in the pit lane with damage to the cars and having to try and get them repaired as soon as possible. But as our drivers make their way through here, Joe Pinder backing off at Ignition Motorsport versus the HW racing car Cranley Swash, and looking for another opportunity a little bit later on in this race. But given the fact that it's only 12 minutes and the lap times are 2.5 minutes each, there's not many laps out there. You do a bit of quick mathematics, and that amounts to only 5 laps of racing here in the sprint. As meanwhile, we look to what is Pinder under pressure from Shield, and in fact he goes very deep there. I think just being intimidated a little bit by Shield taking a look for the move, and in the end, it's also Tony Bradley who comes on through as Jack Ward now also looks to get a little bit closer, and will Ward losing out the most of everybody. Jack Ward falling down the order like a stone at the start of the race. We'll try and understand what happened as he cuts the inside there of Pinder and gets the move done, or does he, as Pinder comes on back, and in fact Ward having to lift off here in the battle for its P13, the silver class. What does being kicked up in front from a lock-up, and will Pinder and Ward side by side coming through the chicane. Pinder outside to inside, and Ward goes a little bit deep, and Wayne Basson trying to make the move now as they head down towards turn number 1. But meanwhile, further drama. David Biggerdike losing out in the run down the start for the straight. I think there's a slowdown penalty that he's serving for DC Sim Racing as we see a car off there, and that's Chris Cole that's parked up, the gold class driver. We're not quite sure what the story is there, other than he's losing a lot of place in quick succession. But meanwhile, all this is going on, we look a little bit further up the order once again to Jack Isherwood, and Will Isherwood right now P3 in the silver class, P13 overall, tucked in behind Ryan Walker, and he's got Rob Selby behind, and the Shell V-Power team racing driver looking up the inside of Isherwood as they go into Lecom, going all in here in the number 32 car, and well, very colourful car. Will it be a distraction? He'll be open, it distracts him a little bit. Isherwood gets distracted by it, but 2 wide, they make the way out of turn number 7, and Will Selby there disappearing for a brief moment and reappearing due to connectivity. But as he goes onto the brakes here, they're still battling between himself and what is Lewis Willisey, and Willisey looking around the outside for Tresla Motorsport, but the Scotsman can't quite find it at this time, but heading in towards X corner. Meanwhile, we look from them back to Charles Phillips, and Will Phillips right now with Philipp Hammer right behind him. I think wary of the fact that Hammer will be looking to put the pressure on as much as possible, but as we move our way into the second half of this race, it's always the consideration in the fact that right now would Hammer be better off finishing P8 to take reverse grid pole, and at least guarantee himself a major opportunity at 1 win today. Of course, circumstances permitting that in this race it doesn't turn around towards the end. But meanwhile, as we look from them to a little bit further back, we look to Jason Mumford meanwhile in P21, who's under pressure from Cranley Swash. As you can see there, the HW Racing Machine trying to take a little peek on the privateer, and we also have Sean Dobie in the mix there for P20. They're all trying to battle for position hard as they make their way out of Where's the Fantasy Chicane into Stavelot 1, but no exchange at the moment. We ride on board here with Mumford as he goes a little bit deep. They're coming through Stavelot 1, and well, I think the opportunity is going to come. It'll be coming out of Stavelot 2 and all the way through but in fact they're just losing outside on corner exit, and now Cranny Swash looking a little bit more threatening by comparison as they power the way up towards Blancheville corner. Through the long left they'll go very shortly, and we can see Cranny Swash looking a lot more comfortable in terms of his placement into the corner. Mumford, I think, under a lot of pressure as he runs a little bit wide. He'll get away with that, but he can't keep making a habit of it as they made the one to the brakes here for the chicane all the way, and Cranny Swash very aggressive on the brakes, not quite able to get close enough as Mumford goes a bit deep but covers off the run through 19, and that is the lap complete as they make the one to another one. Meanwhile, a bit out the road, Isherwood battling side by side with Lee Holmes, and Isherwood has lost out versus Lewis Willisey, and now Holmes is going to come on through to take what is overall position P15 as they come through the right-hander and up the hill they charge. But meanwhile, we've also got a car around there, I believe, in the rear of the picture, and that is Jason Mumford, unless I'm mistaken, has had a bit of an incident, although we'll try and get an update on that as soon as we possibly can. In fact, I don't think it's Mumford, I think it's another driver entirely, and we're not quite sure who it was, but Isherwood gets it wrong. Rouge and Radion catches the car in time, thankfully off circuit there, but everyone having to be a little bit cautious as the Briton got it wrong, but he returns towards the inside line and gets himself back up to speed. Meanwhile, behind where it's going to be what is Pinder versus Ward as they go 3 wide from Remote. Ward looking up the inside, but he's had to sacrifice a little bit of speed here for safety, but right now it's going to be a concern as he makes way into the break. So Ward all the way in and Pinder backs off there, and Jack Wood gains a place. Ward looking to go by the dozen here in terms of places gained. So remember, he started right towards the front of the silver class and he's lost out massively. Now, whilst all this is going on, we do have a brief moment to take a look at what happened at the race start, and in particular we take a look at what happened to Jack Ward into turn number 1. This is in the run down towards the opening corner at the race start, and keep your eyes on Ward on the left hand side of your screen. There were some moments I would try. Oh goodness me, somebody getting it very, very wrong in the rear of the picture. I believe that may have been what was, well, I'm not really sure who that was. Was it Craig Shield potentially who ended up in that major knock? But Ward lose now in the run. Not so in fact in the run through turn number 1. It may have been a little bit later in the run up the hill, but either way we'll try and understand. But let's also understand what happened at the start, and was it Craig Shield ended up in that major knock coming down? Well, here's Shield in the focus of our camera dead centre, and it's the number 79 car that got knocked. That's Alexander Wilfert from Team Germany, and Shield in the end was behind him and ended up in that contact. Well, that's how the two of them came together, and Sean Cranny Swash just having to take it sensitive through. We did have some data to say that Cranny Swash was involved in an incident, but not so. But that was the race start as they made their way down to turn number 1. We're not going to stay away from the live racing too long, ladies and gentlemen. We could dissect everything that happened right now. There's plenty more happening in the live timings, and well, as we referred to Cranny Swash only moments ago, he's crusading his way up through the field quite rapidly. In fact, he's moved his way up to P18, and that's P6 of the silver class. He's now chased after Steve Kershaw, a little bit of Alistair Hatcher behind. Meanwhile, we look from him to inside the top 10, and in particular we look to Ryan Walker, who wants to gain one more place before this race is over. And the satellite racing driver has made a habit all season so far of looking to inherit reverse grid pole, given his finishing positions in the sprint races, and he'll need to take on both Sprout and Jimenez if he wants to get it done, given the fact he's P10 at the moment. He's got Jotautas behind. This is the battle for P9, the gold class, and well, both drivers here out of position, they would argue, compared to where they normally like to race. Well, Jotautas looking to the inside, Walker on the outside, onto the brakes he'll shortly go into Lake Jotautas has got the nose ahead already. I think Walker's going to let this one go rather than fight it too hard as they make their way through Lake and down the hill very shortly towards Rivage. As they come roaring on down and all the way in towards turn number 8. Meanwhile, we see our drivers heading on through, and we also look to Cameron Willisey, who in at P3 at the moment, fending off Joe Newman, and Newman like a rocket at this point in time as we ride on board and look back on the Willisey racing machine. And Cameron Willisey, no slouch by comparison, but looking at the gaps there, you can see that right now Newman only half a second off and closing very quickly, as meanwhile the top two of Peregrina and Gestad have just disappeared off into the distance. But as I try to make the way in towards Flanders Chicane, I think for Willisey, his focus now will just be on the podium. Meanwhile, for Newman, he wants to creep on the podium. The Empire Motorsport driver definitely enjoying the racing here today as they make their way up towards Stavelot, and behind Hammer versus Phillips. Well, Philipp Hammer right now wants to try and gain one more place for points, but of course the P6 finish here will mean he'll start P3 on the grid for the purposes of the feature. So will he lose out too much if he doesn't gain one more position? Well, it's a slight loss of points, but he could gain in the stakes of off the line into the source on the next race. But as they head on through and in towards Blanchemont corner, one more lap to go after this one as the clock is almost going to strike 12 minutes, albeit our race leaders making the way already for the chicane. Meanwhile, Newman goes wide, and I think that's going to be a slowdown there for Newman, and Newman catching the car in fact, and the car comes loose as he goes straight on, with the Empire Motorsport driver having a huge scare there. He brings it back together, but that is going to send him a long way down the order, the P6, and any slowdowns that he's incurred alongside that, he will have to gradually serve. And behind him right now is your silver leader, Luke Andrews, as he goes on to one more lap, and with the FR20 Sim Racing purple driver P7, he's definitely going to be in the medley for what is the partial reverse grid, and that would put him on the front row in P2 if he finishes where he currently stands, and I don't think he's going to quite believe it. But meanwhile, speaking of believing it, we've got a car going slow, and I believe that was running slowly there. And what was, albeit we're not 100% sure who it was, I think it might have been Chris Cole, although we'll try and get a verification on that, but somebody was going slowly, letting the leaders on through. And Phillips versus Hammer, that's the focus of our attention as Hammer looks up the inside, Phillips on the outside, and Hammer making sure that Phillips has literally got the bare minimum room. It's close racing between the two, and it's what we love to see. Phillips outside to inside, Hammer tried to hold onto the position to P4, and Phillips in the end has the back off there, just not enough grip on the tyres. Hammer in return, however, has a difficult line coming out of 7, down towards the Raj at turn 8, and it's going to be Phillips who looks on the inside, but Hammer closes the door as much as he can and makes it unappetising, and Phillips says, right, I'll come back a little bit later. As they make their way in towards X corner, well, it's Hammer now up to P4. He's gradually ascending through the order after that difficult start, but meanwhile, further back down the field, we can see Jack Ward battling for P20 versus Wes Alistair Hatcher, and looking to do the same as what Phillips was only trying to do on Hammer a moment ago into Ravage corner. But for Ward, he's going to make it count as he comes through, and the UKSimRacing driver up to P19 as Hatcher backs off before trying to make the run into X corner on the inside, a very tight corner. It's very difficult to go too wide there unless you're fully committed, but as they make the way through, it's now Jack Ward in P7 in the silver class, P19 overall as he heads into Puon. But coming on down the hill, and meanwhile we look from them to what is your race leader of Alex Peregrina, and right now the Avatar Racing driver with a 2.5 second advantage over Heckel Gestad is just continuing to saunter off into the distance. Only one more pair of quarters to go in the form of the bus stop chicane, and well, for the Avatar Racing driver, he put it on pole by a sizable margin, and as he comes on through, the checker flag awaits him, and it has been a dominant run in this race, and he comes to the line. Avatar Racing's Alex Peregrina takes the win in the 28 car in the gold class and overall by 2.5 seconds over Heckel Gestad for Ignium Motorsport. The Norwegian in a great race to second, and then bringing it on home on the podium, it is Cameron Willesey P3 ahead of Philipp Hammer P4 with Giles Phillips P5, and then Joe Newman P6 ahead of Samuel Sproul, and Luke Andrews makes it a P8 overall and a silver class win. He'll be your reverse grid pole sitter for the feature ahead of Haroldas Jotautas P9, Ricardo Jimenez P10, Ryan Walker P11, Roxanne Marshall P12, P2 in the silver class ahead of Lee Holmes, and then Rob Zelby ahead of Lewis Willesey, who rounds off the silver podium, P15 overall. David Biggerdike P16, with Sean Cranny Swash P17 there in his first top 5 of the season, unless my memory's mistaken. Steve Kershaw P18, Jack Wood P19, Alistair Hatcher P20. Still more coming through, include Jason Mumford, Jack Ishwood P22, Joe Pinner P23, Sean Dowie P24, Wayne Basson P25, Tony Bradley P26, and then Craig Shaw ahead of Glenn Humberstone. And will Glenn Humberstone, one of the last riders to head on the round right now of a very difficult race, as he makes his way on down the hill and in towards Pullman Corner, still racing versus Alexander Wilfer, and both drivers having a race not to remember, as they'll be starting towards the back of the field in the build-up to race number 2, and well, they're going to have a long way to go, but thankfully it is a 30-minute race, and well, it's a relatively calm start to the race in the midfield that we saw in round number 7 in the sprint, but could it be a little bit more ferocious in the run to turns 1 and also onto the Kemmel Straight in the second race of the day, as we see Alexander Wilfer a bit behind there, the Team Germany driver who had that knock right at the start which put him out of position, and in the end he has soldiered on to bring it on home under racing conditions on the lead lap, and that will put him in good stead. It will give him a little bit of a motivation boost going into the second race of the day, because of course when you do end up in a race-ending incident or a near race-ending incident right at the start of the race, it immediately does upset you as a driver, but you do need to get your head back in the game and push on and get to the checker flag, and that's exactly what Wilfer and also Humberstone have done. They've got their heads down, got on with the job, and as we see the ATEC Tech Racing purple driver head to the line, it'll be a P16 in the silver class, P28 overall for him in the 212, and for Alexander Wilfer it will be a P29, P13 in the gold class, the Team Germany driver in the 79. But the racing is complete for our first race of the day, ladies and gentlemen, and whilst we do take a brief breather, let's take you through those results subject to any stewards' inquiries. So after what was 12 minutes of racing in the round 7 sprint, I should say, for the UKSimRacing at Porsche Cup Season 6 here today at Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, Alex Peregrina taking the win for Haroldas Racing by 2.5 seconds over Evening Motorsports' Haroldas. Cameron Willesee, meanwhile, battling to a valiant third place on the podium there for Willesee Racing, albeit 9.5 seconds off the race winner and also 7 seconds off of Gristad. The top two in a world of their own, and Willesee holding the rest of the field at bay, with Team Germany's Philipp Hammer making a great recovery drive to P4. He'll be taking those points with open arms, and the number one driver holding off Phillips GP's Giles Phillips to the end, and Phillips finishing in P5 as a result. Joe Newman P6 for Empire Motorsport ahead of Samuel K-Sproul for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand. And then Luke Andrews, your silver class winner, taking P8 there overall for the FR20 Sim Racing purple outfit, and with that reverse grid pole. And he will have a huge prize on his hands, which is to try and make it onto the overall podium. Only a limited number of drivers in the silver class can say they've ever been able to do that come the end of a 30-minute feature. Haroldas Jotautas P9 there for Over Limit Racing ahead of Ricardo Jimenez, and completed the top 10 for Haroldas Racing, and then best the rest for what was Ryan Walker in the satellite racing machine. Roxanne Marshall P12, the silver class driver there, taking second place in the silver class ahead of Lee Holmes, with Rob Zelby and Lewis Willesee completing the top 15, and a special mention to Lewis Willesee, of course, for the fact he rounded off the silver podium, and the Tresla Motorsport drive being followed up by David Biggerdite, Sean Cranley-Swash and Steve Kershaw in the top 18. And as we continue our way on down the order, there was Jack Ward ahead of Alistair Hatcher to complete the top 20, and then it was Jason Mumford, Jack Isherwood, Joe Pinder, Sean Doby, Wayne Bassam, Tony Bradley, Craig Short and Glenn Humberstone to P28, and then what was Alexander Wilford and Corey Lazarus to P30, with Emil Cummins, Chris Cole and Aaron Tresla. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, of course, Aaron Tresla being our sole retirement from that race, the warm-up for the second race of the day is complete, and it's now time for our drivers to transition to the circuit once again to get ready to go racing for 30 minutes. Well, as they start to line up on the grid, this is how the grid will be arranged for the second race of the day. It's the round 8 feature at Spa-Francorchamps. Luke Andrews takes reverse grid pole for FR20 Sim Racing Purple, joined on the front row by Samuel Sproul from Blackout Motorsport New Zealand. Joe Newman lines up on the second row for Empire Motorsport, joined by Phillips GP's Giles Phillips, and then we have Team Germany's Philipp Hammer started off the third row, with Willesee Race's Cameron Willesee alongside. On the fourth row, it's Haroldas for Evening Motorsports, who is joined by Alex Peregrina for Haroldas Racing, and they'll be followed up by the pair on the fifth row of Haroldas Jotautas for Over Limit Racing and Haroldas Racing's Ricardo Jimenez. On row number 6, outside the top 10, it's Ryan Walker starting P11 for Satellite Racing, joined by Roxanne Marshall for 24-hour Punty People, and then on row number 7, it'll be Lee Holmes for ATEC Racing Team Purple, joined by Shell V-Power Race Team's Rob Selby. On row number 8, it's Lewis Willesee for Tresla Motorsport and DC Sim Race's David Biggerdike, followed up by what is their Sean Cranley-Swash and Steve Kershaw, and in the top 20 completed by Jack Ward and Alistair Hatcher. On row at number 11, it's Jason Mumford and Jack Isherwood, but we have to stop there, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for us to go racing. Here are the lights. 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for the second race of the day as Luke Andrews looks to get a Goliath start into turn number 1. We can see a little bit battling further back, including Walker going to the grass on the inside, but focusing on Andrews here, he looks to get it done as he comes up through the right-hander, and can he hold on to the position as Sproul looks around the outside, where it's going to be too wide all the way up the hill they charge, and indeed as they roar their way, we reload the overlay, heading on through and making their way in towards the Uruj Radion complex here. Both drivers keeping it calm and collected as they come on through the right, and Luke Andrews leads as they make their way onto the Kemmel Straight, but charging the way on through, looking a little bit further back. We can see a little bit of wobble there between Cameron Willesee and what was Giles Phillips as they almost go 3 wide here, and Willesee looking to go in the middle of the road as Phillips round the outside, of which Joe Newman, and Will Phillips making major gains as Newman goes hot on the brakes here to try and hold off Willesee, but as they come 2 wide through, Willesee around the outside takes the grass, it's contact with Newman goes round and Willesee regains the position, albeit with wounds to the car, and I don't think he'll be too pleased about how he's achieved that as they make their way out turn 7 and down towards 8, coming on down the hill they go, and Phillips now under pressure as he rolls it into Ravage. He's lost a lot of pace there, and Haroldas looking around the outside as Joe Newman has had to be towed to the pits. Bezos tries to make the way on through in to X corner through turn number 9. Things will settle down for a brief moment, but meanwhile further back we can see it side by side towards the rear of the field. It's Alexander Wilford trying to go round the outside of Cranley-Swash into the inside of X corner. This is bold stuff from Alexander Wilford. It may be for P27, but he wants to make those gains as soon as possible. Still 2 wide as they make the way on down towards Fulham corner, and Wilford going all in on the brakes here, but has to give it up in the end as Cranley-Swash holds the position. Meanwhile, we look back up to Phillips versus Peregrina. Peregrina around the outside outside of Phillips into the Panther chicane, takes the inside for turn 13, and will the Phillips GP driver there losing places? And I think, is there a problem with the car? That's the question, as Jotautas now looking around the outside, and well, the over limit racing driver being very bold to look for that move as he has to tuck back in, and we jump on board with the number 45 car. Now powering his way out of Stavelot 2 and heading up towards Blanchimont. Well, Phillips definitely seemingly struggling with any straight line speed here as he makes way out towards Blanchimont around the outside. The Jotautas is going to look, but is he going to be able to find here? He's going to have to back out slightly as he turns on in, looks for the cut back instead, but he'll lose a little bit of momentum as he powers his way down. He's got Jimenez only 2 tenths behind. Onto the brakes they go into the final corners. Well, Jotautas looking around the outside, but Phillips covers him off there, and he's going to have to wait his turn on to the next lap. Meanwhile, we're hearing there's been an instant further on back for a couple of drives, including what is Marshall and also Zelby in the run through Blanchimont, but further back down the order. Meanwhile, Corey Lazarus trying to make some further gains, making the move here on what is, I do believe, we're trying to make the move on Isherwood, as Isherwood defends the inside and Lazarus having to wait, watch and look for another opportunity. He's got Wayne Basson looking for the move, but meanwhile, whilst all this has been playing out, Samuel Sproul has taken the lead this race over Luke Andrews, and well, we had an exchange of overall lead but not class lead as our drives power their way onto lap number 2, and well, here we can see towards Lazarus trying to pick his way past Isherwood in the battle for P14, but heading in towards the next braking zone. Isherwood gets it wrong, and it's the tyre barrier there for the number 16 driver, and he just manages to not careen completely across the course, and therefore everyone's able to take evasive action. The shield goes around the outside, but Isherwood right now is going to drop down the order like a stone. That's going to be a lot of places gained for a good number of his silver counterparts, as meanwhile we look back up to the front of the field. Now after 1.5 laps, it's Samuel Sproul who leads this race of Blackout Motorsport New Zealand ahead of Luke Andrews is in P2. It's the gold class leader ahead of the silver class leader. Behind it's Heckle Gestad versus Cameron Willisey. The battle for P3 rages on with the Indian Motorsports driver holding on to the position for now, and Willisey looking hot on his heels. There's Alex Peregrina P5 ahead of Giles Phillips P6, Haroldas Jotautas P7, Ricardo Jimenez P8, Ryan Walker P9, and Philipp Hammer completing the top 10. As here is Hammer, and he's had a difficult start. He's lost 5 places overall and 7 in class. He makes his way on down through Porn as he comes on through Lewis Willisey. Meanwhile, P11 best of rest there, holds up to P2 in the silver class head of David Biggerdike, but these two are only separated by 1 second at this time, and well, they could be coming together again soon. But meanwhile, behind we can see Joe Pinder there letting what is Corey Lazarus go, respect to the fact he's battling with a driver in a different class, and we can see just behind Emil Koopmans trying to really make his way on past Wayne Basson and Jack Ward. He clears the 2 silvers, and as he makes his way into a Stavelot 1, well, Koopmans here absolutely fired up and looking to go for more moves of plenty as time wears on, but as he makes his way out of Stavelot 2, well, his next target will be Joe Pinder, who's a silver class driver, before he bumps into his next gold class driver of Corey Lazarus. But as they head up towards bus stop chicane very shortly via, of course, Blanchimont. Meanwhile, we look from them to Ryan Walker. And Ryan Walker under pressure from Philipp Hammer in the battle for P9, and Hammer looking at a potential move there under braking. Can't quite find it as they all start to stockade. But behind Jimenez, who in return is being held up a little bit by Phillips there. And whatever's happened to Phillips' car, he's found the issue and he's repaired it. I would imagine it might have been an electronic setting, but for Phillips, a very slow start has cost him dear, and now finds him battling towards the back end of the top 10, albeit he'll be enjoying the battling, but I think he'll be wondering what could have been given how slow the Phillips GP car was of the line and through the opening lap. But as they make their way through the kink and up towards turns 2, 3 and 4, Rouge and Ruddy on the go once again. Well, they'll all stay in line astern here as they come on through, no real opportunity. Meanwhile, further back we can see Jack Ward looking a little bit antsy versus Wade Basson as they look to hunt after P5 in the silver class, and as they make the way out of Radion and onto the Kemmel Straight, where it's going to be a slow run for Basson. Meanwhile, Ward looking for the move here. He's going to have to tease it out on the outside, gets very close there, almost touching the rear quarter plane. I want to say power the way down. Meanwhile, Pinder on a slowdown, he's going to give a place up to both of them. Ward on the outside versus Basson on the inside, coming on through the right into left, and Ward goes deep. He cuts across the course, and well, he avoids his contact with the rivals around him, and instead the wayward Porsche driver brings it back to circuit now, and the Willisey Racing driver now looking to gain 2 places rather than just the 1. But as he comes on down into Rivage corner, he'll know that was a near miss. It could have been far, far worse, as meanwhile we look from them up to what is the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars, and you can see here Samuel Sproul holding on to lead, albeit with Gestad close behind. Luke Andrews losing another place overall, but again, I don't think he's going to be too concerned about that. But meanwhile, Peregrina up the inside versus Willisey. This is for gold class position and gold class podium. P3 in the gold class, and Peregrina can't quite find it that time, but as he comes on through it down into the braking zone for Stavelot 1, well, there's a long way to go in this race. And the thing for the simple reason here is I wonder how much tyre life they're going to have by the end of it, given how hard they're pushing at the moment. Absolutely charging on as they make the way on through. In fact, there was a car wide there. That was Gustad going extremely wide, coming out of Stavelot 1 and 2. And I wonder whether Gustad's going to have a sizable slowdown penalty as to start. I think he has got one. He's trying to bleed it off into Blanchimont, being a bit tactical with it as they all charge their way past the apex camera. Beautiful camera there, gives you a sense of the speed as they come on down. And we see Willesee defending versus Peregrina, but opens the door out. Peregrina looks to the inside. Can't quite find it at the moment, has to back out again. But now Jotautas getting extremely close as they make the way out of turns 18 and 19 and on to another lap. And powering the way down towards turn number 1 once more. And as they head across the timeline, will Hammer close behind, looking to the inside versus Jimenez, and Jimenez defending hard. And what I think here, Jimenez playing 2 roles. The first one is for himself in terms of defending position, but also making sure that his teammate, Peregrina, is able to gain as many places as possible before Hammer comes off through. And the Team Germany driver here really does need to put his foot down and find a way through quickly, because I think places are his for the taking if he can clear Jimenez as they make the way through Rouge onto Radion and charging out onto the Kemmel straight. Now you can see Walker just falling a little bit further behind. Now 1 second to Walker is the gap as they head on down the Kemmel straight. Hammer looks to the inside here, and well, Jimenez I don't think has got a reaction at this point other than try and go outside to inside. It's going to be close on the brakes, and Hammer not quite there before the turning point, and therefore it's going to be a disadvantage as it goes outside to inside and inside to outside for Hammer in particular. But Jimenez in the end tries to open the corner up, and in doing so relinquishes the position. Now will there be a counter attack down into Ravage? Well, Jimenez looks the outside and Hammer covers the inside, and well, with this corner, of course, unless you're planning to go all the way round the outside, it is very hard to try and throw a dummy into Ravage. And in the end, Hammer holds the position. A nice move there, and the Team Germany driver moves up to P7. But as he makes more ground, meanwhile we look from him to Peregrina versus Willesee, and Peregrina has finally found his way on past Willesee off camera as he comes on down and around. And in fact, in terms of how that move was made, we'll take a look back very shortly as a critical move for Peregrina to gain another place. And in fact, we do have a replay as of now. In fact, firstly, this is Jack Ward making the move on what was there, Joe Pinder trying to go around the outside. A lovely move from Jack Ward round Pinder around the outside for P15, P4 in the silver class, albeit there making a bit of a mistake on corner exit, and Pinder coming back. But I think there's a bit more to this story. Ours was in the run down towards Ravage corner. I can see why now this replay has been brought up as Ward then finally making the move stick at Ravage, and Pinder not able to come back at him. But then we take a look at what happened between Peregrina and Karen Willesee. That was the other question. And here is the replay that we mentioned originally. Was up the inside into Ravage corner, and well, absolutely nailing it there and coming out of the corner. Willesee thought about the inside running to X corner and decided no, it's better to play it safe. But as we return to live pictures now, ladies and gentlemen, racing continues here as we come towards the end of the first 10 minutes of racing, and what may come to the end of that will be no shortage as we begin to say hello to in the YouTube chat Exam, and also what is there, I do believe, Adam54G. Good evening to you both, gentlemen. I hope you're doing well and enjoying the racing. But as our drivers make the way on out of turn number 1 onto what for them is now lap number 5, where it's Hammer versus Jotautas, and as he heads down towards turn number 2, well, Hammer's going to be a little bit vulnerable here as the over-limit racing driver looks inside outside, but he can't quite find it in the end, has to back off. But as we jump on board with the Lithuanian, gets an absolutely colossal run of a Radion, powering his way up through the gearbox here. It's going to be close between the two of them all the way and down, and well, these two no strangers to battling one another this season, I can tell you that. Looking up the inside here, going all in on the brakes, but Willesee down the outside, it makes it a little bit sketchy in terms of closing into the apex. Hammer just taking his natural braking point, albeit off centre line. Meanwhile, Jotautas having to brake a little bit early, I think over concerned by what could potentially be in a 3-wide scenario against the bear run off at turn number 7, but the run to Ravage is too short for him to capitalise as he comes on down. But Jotautas absolutely going for it here. He knows that he can squeeze his way into P2 in the championship tonight if he beats Hammer to the punch here in this feature race, and will all the more for it. The team will be absolutely egging him on as he makes his way out of X corner and down towards Bourne, but there a little bit slow off the corner, having to bring the car off apex and coming into Bourne now. He'll calm down before going on the offensive once more. But as we look from him to a little bit further down the order, Lewis Willesee here with what is there, Emil Kuhlman's up the inside, the apex misses driver, not missing his apex, and as they make the way through 10 and 11, Willesee falls down to P13 overall, but it's not a class position change. He's still P2 in the silver class with a 2.2 second gap to David Biggerdike behind, as the UKSimRacing driver just carrying on and making his way comfortably through in P3, P14 overall this time. But as we look from him to what is Luke Andrews, the silver class leader, well, right now P3 overall. And I think the FR20 Sim Racing purple driver will be thinking about what he can do in holding off Alex Peregrina. Well, he's got the fastest man on circuit behind him right now, and that is not a comfortable feeling. We having to fend off technically the fastest driver in gold class here today as they come down towards the braking zone for turns 18 and 19 onto the brakes, and Andrew's just keeping firm here, sticking to his guns as he makes his way on through bus stop and on towards the next lap as they power out. Look at the leaders here, and Samuel Sproul has been caught up to quite rapidly by Heckel Gestad, 4 attempts in that previous lap, and Sproul having to go defensive now into La Source. And could this be a move around the outside for Willis Gestad? Well, if it is, it's going to be a bold one, but Sproul holds him off there. As you can see, Andrew still battling side by side with Peregrina in the background, but we stay focused on the leaders. I think Sproul's trying to back the pace off a little bit in order to protect the car, but if he's doing so, he's going to be very vulnerable up Kemmel Straight here as they come through Richard Radion. Now's the line through the apex, however, and it doesn't look as though the New Zealander at this point will be absolutely hoping he's got enough speed in the car, but I think Gestad's got other ideas. He looks to the right, it's Gestad on the right of your picture, Sproul on the left of your picture as they break their way down into Lecom very shortly, where it's going to be Gestad trying to go all the way round. He makes it count, and Heckel Gestad takes the lead of this race as he makes his way in towards turn number 7. A nice move there, a classic run round the outside. Alex Peregrina up to P3, past Luke Andrews now, and he's got the buffer of Andrews to Cameron Willisey, and Willisey is gradually being caught up to by Jotautas, as meanwhile we're hearing that is Philipp Hammer's dropped down to P10, and we're not quite sure exactly what's happened to Philipp Hammer beyond the fact he's lost multiple places, and we may be able to get a little bit of closure on that very shortly in terms of a replay. But meanwhile we look back to the silver class, and things are firing up here to be inside the top 5 of the silver class, with Glenn Humberstone P17 overall, P6 in class, chasing after Joe Pinder, who is P5 in the aforementioned class. They make their way through Rivage, but coming on down the hill and into the wind of X corner, you can also see Wayne Basson there right behind him. Basson not having a happy day so far today, a difficult race 1, and now looking to try and redeem himself in race number 2, and as they head into put on corner, all stays as is for the time being, but I think there is going to be a potential move on the car to the 212 of Humberstone very shortly. But making his way out to turn 11 now and up towards the Fantasy chicane. The drivers here absolutely hammering it on the brakes every time, and well, the change will be in the fact that they want to preserve a little bit of brake life and also tyre life, particularly the final 7 to 8 minutes of this race, where the overtakes start to become much more prudential and the car's at its lightest possible point, which means that the car will be in its full attack mode in terms of speed and ferocity, and that's where you want the best possible tyres available. And we'll see at those points who will drop off the pace like a stone in terms of who's not been able to protect the car long enough. But as they make the way around right now, I think Humberstone just focusing on one thing, and that is clearing the Ignition Motorsport machine in front of him. But Basson getting very close as they make the way towards Blodgepur, but Humberstone's going to go for it. Pinder gives him the move on the inside as they come on through. It's too wide on quarter apex, but how does it materialise on exit? Well, Humberstone has to back out. Meanwhile, Basson's going to go round the outside and look for the move, but I don't think he's going to have enough time to do it as Humberstone defends, and Basson has to back out. They stay as they were as they make the way onto the next lap. As they come on out, we've also got Cranny Swash starting to close up to this battle. It's going to be a 4-way fight for P5 in the silver class at this rate, and further back we can tell you that at this time Craig Schill starting to close a little bit on Jack Isherwood. Isherwood loses out early on in the race, of course, and Craig Schill gradually gaining ground as he makes his way out of the bus stop chicane and onto another lap and reaching the halfway point of this race. But meanwhile, looking from them to Philipp Hammer, will you be amazed where he is in this pack? He's tucked in right behind Ryan Walker there. He's trying to make ground, and Phillips on the inside there defending, using Walker as a little bit of a roadblock there for Hammer, and Hammer just not able to take the line he wanted, with Walker breaking a little bit earlier by looks of things, and now Hammer's forced back to P10, but he is absolutely being tested here to his limit in terms of patience, as meanwhile we look to Pinder versus Humberstone. Humberstone on the inside. Meanwhile, that's Basson going a bit deep across the grass, and Cranny Swash comes on through to take P7 in the silver class, P18 overall, as Basson tries to recover. It drops even further down the order, but the key thing here is that Glenn Humberstone has moved up to P5 in the silver class, and now is trying to break away for ATEC Tech Racing Team Purple. They go hunted after Jack Ward, who is 4.5 seconds up the road. But whilst all this is playing out, meanwhile, we do look from them to a little bit further up the road and back to the battle for what is P2 for a P3 overall in the gold class between Samuel K. Sproul for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand and Avatar Races Alex Peregrina. And will these two, as they come through Stavelot 1 into Stavelot 2, you can see how close it is on quarter exit as we ride on board the gearbox of the New Zealander at Sproul, and right now the Spaniard of Peregrina, the man with all the speed in his hands as he makes his way out to the Blodgepur corner. Well, 3 tenths is the gap and not really closing, and perhaps this is a sign here of how Peregrina's got the car set up compared to Sproul. That's a little bit more downforce in the car, a bit more rear wing just to help the car through the corners, as Sproul ran a little bit wide there coming out of Blanchimont and into the bus stop chicane. It's cost him a bit of momentum, but he holds firm there on the apex as he comes on through to go to the next lap. But Heckel Christad is starting to break away, and on the most recent lap between them, Christad at 19.91, his personal best of the race. Sproul at 19.94, so it is a couple of hundredths between them at this time, nothing too much. But Peregrina a 19.88, he really is trying to usher on this battle for the lead as they make their way up towards Rouge and Radion. You can see they're a little bit further back. Andrew still P4, keeping Haroldas Jotautas at bay, but as they head up towards Rouge Radion, now to the Keppel Straight. Well, Sproul there goes a little bit wide, but it's not going to cost him too much speed. And Peregrina again not able to close up. I think that may be a sign for Sproul now. If he nails his corner exits, he will be fine on the straights because Peregrina just has not got enough speed. Meanwhile, speaking of a driver who has got enough speed, Haroldas Jotautas up the inside of Karen Willesey into Lacombe. It's going to be too wide on entry, but will it be at the midpoint? And no, it's not. Jotautas gets ahead and shuts the door as they make the way through turn 6 and into 7. A nice move there up to P4 in the gold cloth, P5 overall as he comes on down towards Rivage Corner. But further back, meanwhile, in the run on down the Keppel Straight, it is going to be Pinder versus Sean Cranny Swash. Joe Pinder right now defends on the inside. Cranny Swash round the outside of HW-Racing. Goes a bit long, however, and makes his way to the grass. Straight lines the car, and will with that, Glenn Humberstone and Joe Pinder will come on through. Albeit we can see it there, Cranny Swash evading with Pinder's racing line and getting off the road to let the place go. But meanwhile, as they try to sort things out, we do look back to inside the top 10. And it's still Giles Phillips in P8 ahead of Ryan Walker and Corey Lazarus, with Philipp Hammer dropping down to P11 in fact. And well, as Lazarus looks up the inside, Walker there very vulnerable, I think relying on the fact the door's always going to close into the Fangers chicane, and therefore Lazarus looking up the inside, it's not going to be a move that's viable. I think Corey Lazarus has other ideas right now as he's all over the back of Walker. A little bit of tap there to the rear of Walker's car. Well, he's definitely salivated the prospect of moving another place inside the top 10, and when he's got Philipp Hammer behind, I think he's trying to give Walker the hurry up right now to say, look, it's not me you've got to worry about, it's about the Team Germany driver behind. You've got a serious problem that's coming as they make the way through turn number 17. And as we always say, if there's one thing that's inevitable in the feature race when Philipp Hammer's on the grid, is that he will be coming through the field as fast as he possibly can when he's up to temperature. And right now, Hammer's been knocked down a couple of times, but there's still plenty of racing to go. And meanwhile, speaking of being knocked down, Ricardo Jimenez has been knocked down a couple of places for Avatar Racing with a spin coming out of the bus stop chicane. He's dropped down to P7 from what was at the time P5, we do believe, and in fact going slowly there for a slowdown penalty he's having to serve, which is very unfortunate. But as he comes on through turn number 1, goes as deep as possible to evade the other drivers, and we can see Koopmans there coming on through. I think Jimenez now allowed to go racing once again as he powers his way through the kink and up towards the rides. But as they head onwards towards turns 2, 3 and 4, meanwhile we look back to what is Cranny Swash versus Alistair Hatcher. And well, right now Hatch having to go defensive here for A-Tech Racing Team Cyan as he does have that pressure building and looking to find his way past Pinder. But we do have to suspend that full very shortly, ladies and gentlemen, because I believe Charles Phillips has just been involved in a bit of an incident on the Keppel Straight. We'll understand what happened very shortly. We focus here on Hatcher versus Cranny Swash for a brief moment longer as they make the way on through turns 2, 3 and 4. And we'll Hatch having a good run. Cranny Swash close, nothing in it in terms of speed between them. They'll both get the toe of Pinder, and of course for Cranny Swash he'll get a double draft, but he's not gaining nearly enough. Meanwhile, Hatcher is absolutely charging here, but he hasn't got enough run on the straight. And Pinder, well, the way that Indian Motorsport Porsche is set up, it's got a lot of investment in straight line speed, and Pinder very safe there on the Kimmel Straight despite the threat behind. And I think right now if he can nail his apex, he may prove to be a very stubborn driver for the remainder of this race. But I think Hatcher's got more to be worried about here as Cranny Swash looks to go deep into Rivage round the outside, too wide through the corner between the A-Tech Cyan and HW Racing Machine. Cranny Swash still on the inside, onto the brakes into X. It's a beautiful move of the Canadian and moves up to P18, P7 in the silver class, gets it done and forces Hatcher back towards Chris Cole. And Chris Cole was the car you saw much earlier in the race that did have a little bit of an incident as our overlay finally gets refleshed there, and we do have the circuit map here in the top right corner of your screen. Apologies for that, that was absent earlier on. And as Chris Cole comes on down the hill and in towards turn at number 12 at the moment, well, he's gained at one place versus Hatcher, but it's only overall position. And whilst all this has been happening, of course we did have the incident involving what was Giles Phillips. We dropped down the order and we'll give you some clarity on that very shortly. But before we do, we must look to Ryan Walker, who has still got Corey Lazarus all over him, and Lazarus looking for the movement to plunge on. He can't quite find it. This is the battle for P7 overall, P6 in the gold class you're looking at now, and as they make the way through the bus stop chicane, well, Walker there continue to dig in, and well, if we know Walker is good at one thing in particular, it is making sure that the driver is going to have to invest a lot to make a move. As we see a spin there in the rear of the picture, I believe that is Ricardo Jimenez coming through the bus stop chicane, so Jimenez having a difficult midpoint as we make our way in towards the latter 10 minutes of this race, and our drivers are all now starting to feel the wear on the tyres and feeling the cars are becoming very light as the fuel has been taken out of the car through natural attrition. And now for Walker, he's got to try and hold on a little bit longer versus Lazarus. As they make the way on through and on towards the Kemmel Straight, well, Lazarus has had a very strong run, as has Hammer, as they head towards the braking zone of Les Combes. It's a long run. Walker defends the inside. Lazarus looks even closer to the inside line, can't find it. Meanwhile, Hammer looks all the way round. Well, Walker goes as late as he can on the brakes, but Philipp Hammer cruises around the outside of Lazarus, using the opportunity there where Lazarus was trying to poke his nose into an inside line that just never existed in the mind of Walker. And as they make the way out to the corner down towards Rivage, well, Hammer takes a look. Lazarus also takes a look. I think it's there a little bit of an attacking defense in terms of the fact Hammer's making it look like he's going for a move as the driver's off, and that, I believe, is Peregrina. Peregrina is off, and Rivage rejoins. Another two championship contenders here between Hammer and Peregrina. Two major contenders at this time find themselves side by side into Poolham corner. It's the run there into left hand, and they go 3 wide on entry, but you can see there they all break it open as Walker holds position. Hammer there gets on past Peregrina, and Peregrina falls down to P80 in the late stage of the race. Now 9, he's got to make a recovery drive afterwards, looking to be a rather casual run to be on the podium once again, but now his heart will be absolutely pounding his chest. The adrenaline will be going to overdrive. But meanwhile, whilst all this has played out, we take a quick look back at what happened to Charles Phillips a lap ago. And we're looking at Charles Phillips as he was making his way on along the stretch in. It was a slow down penalty for the Phillips GP drive, and that's what enabled many a driver to come on through, including Walker, Lazarus and Hammer. And then we also take a look at what exactly happened to Alex Peregrina with the off track. Well, this is on the lap, they're just on lap number 10, going into Rivage corner onto the brakes and carrying too much speed and avoiding locking up the brakes by letting the car run, but a tap to the tyre barrier there, and that is not going to help the front end of the car in these late stages. But as we return to live pictures, well, Hammer now looking around the outside here of Walker, outside to inside of the bus stop chicane. He's going to make this work, his Hammer. It's a lovely move. He's setting himself up now for La Source, but the problem is with Walker really trying to slip all the pace out of the race here. Well, now he's got to try and make the move count again into La Source, and Walker just holds on, and Peregrina around the outside. Peregrina tries to seize on the opportunity, but Hammer says there's no way round for you, and Peregrina made to go a little bit deep as they come on towards the kink and up towards the Rouge and Radion. Now it's going to be Lazarus versus Peregrina as they head up the hill. 2 wide, they go into the complex. Who's going to back out all the way through the go? Peregrina, then goes a little bit wide, and well, that will be a slowdown for Peregrina. He'll have to let that go as Emil Koemans here says, okay, it's now my turn to shine. And as they make the way down, it's going to be Koemans around the outside of Lazarus. Meanwhile, it's going to be Hammer and Walker side by side into the braking zone of Les Combes, and this time Hammer absolutely kicks the door down and says this P6 is going to be mine whether you like it or not, round the outside. And in the end, I don't think Walker had anything else to give in terms of defending, but beautiful racing between the quintet of drivers. And as they battle on, meanwhile a little bit further back, we've still got further back in between Joe Pinder here and what is, I do believe, Alistair Hatcher for P7 in the silver class. They make the way side by side down the Kemmel Straight. Pinder looking around the outside here of Hatcher, gets it done as the door is shut. Meanwhile, a little bit further behind them, we also do have Wayne Basson, who's trying to chase after Kershaw in the battle for P20, what is P9 in the silver class. And well, this could get quite tasty in the very last lap of the race, given that Basson is closing rapidly. But as we look from there back up to Charles Phillips, well, Phillips right now in P10, that's P9 in gold class, and then onto the brakes here for the Vantage chicane, under pressure from Peregrina. And Peregrina are really having a difficult race, and now as he drops further and down the order and making the way out of turn number 13 into a Stavelot 1 at full 10. Phillips will do everything he can to try and keep the championship leader at bay, to give himself every opportunity to try and creep a little bit closer in the championship standings as we head into the mid-season break. But as they come out of Stavelot 2, well, Peregrina using the full width of the circuit there and then some. Meanwhile, Phillips just using the conservative amount. They power their way on through, and there's going to be, after this lap, lap, 2 more to go. And well, Peregrina all over the back of Phillips, but he can't find a way. Meanwhile, there's late drama, ladies and gentlemen. Samuel Sproul is into the pit lane as I look at my commentary booth window. I wonder if there wasn't enough fuel in the car. Well, if so, Sproul right now is going to relinquish a wide number of positions to his rivals. In fact, I think everyone inside the top 10 is going to gain 1 place. And Phillips here, well, he's got Peregrina looking around the outside. Well, that is a very, very liberal use of track limits for Peregrina, but he's doing everything he can to try and gain places. And as he comes into the braking zone, it's a switch back to the inside, and Peregrina gets it done, or does he, as he runs a little bit wide, and Phillips now tries to cut back and get the power down, but Alex Peregrina finally makes the move count, and Sproul's come out in P5. So we should correct ourselves there in the fact he's only lost 3 places, not outside the top 10. And as I drive power the way onto the hill, Will Phillips has fallen behind Peregrina, and that battle has concluded for now. Meanwhile, we look back to Samuel Sproul, who running in P5, side by side with Hammer, and Hammer looking around outside to inside. Coming off the apex there, a little bit of a slide for the pair of them. But Sproul, who slid into the racing line, and he's covered the position off for now. But of course, Hammer looking to try and make it 1 more place, especially now that Peregrina's down in P10 or P9 in class. Hammer knows this is an opportunity to gain points on the championship rival. But as they head through Ravage Corner, he's got to really push it if he wants to make a move here, because Sproul, again, a very capable driver and knows how to get under the skin of other drivers in terms of defending hard. But as they make their way out of Ixon down towards Pearl Corner, meanwhile behind you can see the other Blackout Motorsport New Zealand machine of Corey Lazarus all over the back of Walker, and will feel as though he's got a bit of pace here at the end of the race to try and make a couple more places stick. Will he be able to do so given the time? However, there will be 1 more lap after this one. The ultimate lap is an opportunity, but on the last one, that's where you've really got to go for it. You won't get any more opportunities after that, given the fact the checker flag will await him, and then it will be potentially missed points. But as he makes his way into Stavelot 1, coming through the right hander here and onwards towards Stavelot 2. We're hearing that Ricardo Jimenez has been involved in a further incident that's had to be towed to the pit, a long way down the order, and a difficult end today for the Avatar Racing driver. Indeed, Avatar Racing had a great start to both races, but it's in the feature in particular where it's all going wrong. But meanwhile, right now, Walker doing everything right to hold on to the position here for P7 as the Satellite Racing driver comes on through Blancheville Corner, and now he'll do this 1 more time before he sees the checkered flag going into the bus stop chicane this time around. Well, it's going to be a look around the outside by Lazarus, outside to inside. I think Corey Lazarus will have this because they come off the corner, which 2 wide of corner exit. Emil Cooper's been involved in the incident. He's had to be towed to the pit. We'll take a look back at that very shortly. But meanwhile, side by side here between Walker and Lazarus, they head their way up towards turn number 1, and Walker still defends. And as they make the way on through, well, Lazarus looks to the cutback here. I think Walker's got his measure for now, as meanwhile Hammer has found his way past Sproul in the run to turn at number 1 off camera. And as they power the way up the hill, things calm down for a brief moment, or do they, as Lazarus now looks to the inside, but he thinks better of it. And whilst we do have a brief breather, we take a look at what happens to the Apex Business car at Emil Koopmans. So bouncing off of the apex curb there of Blanchemont, and the car just letting go, and a nasty whack to the wall there for the Apex Business driver, and we can understand why he's had to tow to the pits as a result. An unfortunate one there, but still plenty more rounds of racing for him, no question about it, for the Dutchman. And meanwhile, as we return to your live pictures now, no more replays the end, ladies and gentlemen. We focus on the racing all the way through, and as we can see here, Lazarus still chasing after Walker, but meanwhile at the head of the camera, Hammer ahead of Sproul. I think Sproul now maybe just running out of a little bit of steam to try and come back against Hammer in the battle for P4 in the gold class, but ahead of him, of course, just off of the overall podium places. Here's your silver class leader of Luke Andrews for FR20 SimRacing Purple, who's had a bit of a lonely race in terms of not battling with his peers in class, but he's had a lot of company in the form of the gold class drivers, and I think I'm already getting echoes to, of course, the performances of Cameron Willisey back in, if my memory serves me correctly, season 4, in the silver class here at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, putting on an absolutely brilliant display in front of the gold class drivers. But as we look back to Lazarus here, looking around the outside to inside and through, the Vajra chicane goes a bit deep and has to recover the car. Well, for Lazarus, I think that may be all in and all out of the race now in terms of trying to make that move for P7. We'll have to wait to see whether there's a late mistake from Walker, but I doubt there will be, given Walker's composure. But meanwhile, speaking of composure, here's the one driver who's not lost his composure at all today. Peregrina looked strong up front, but it was a mistake that cost him dear. But where he fell, Hector Gestad was able to rise to the top, and as he comes out of the final corner, he'll take the win in the feature race. Round number 8, it's Hector Gestad from Ignia Motorsports who crosses the line. Your golden overall winner here after 31 20 minutes of racing ahead of Haroldas Jotautas, who takes P2, and with that leapfrogs his way back in to the battle at the top of the Gold Championship ahead of Cameron Willesey, who rounds off the golden overall podium. And it's another silver class win for Luke Andrews, making it 2 out of 2 for FR20 SimRacing Purple today, P4, ahead of Philipp Hammer P5 in what has been a damage limitation pair of races. Samuel Sprout P6, Brian Walker P7 ahead of Corey Lazarus, and then Alex Peregrina fighting to a P9 in the end ahead of Giles Phillips P10, as we see Gustad there kicking up a lot of smoke in celebration and taking a win. David Biggerdike P11, second place in the silver class ahead of Jack Ward, who rounds off the silver class podium for Willesey Racing P12. Glenn Humberstone crossing the line P13, and then Chris Colt ahead of Lewis Willesey and Alistair Hatcher, and further behind there you can see as they gradually make the way on through, Sean Cradley Swash crossing the line near P7 in the silver class, P17 overall ahead of Steve Kershaw and Wayne Basson. Basson not able to find the move come the very end of the race, and then we can see with Joe Pinder P20 ahead of Craig Schill, with Tony Bradley P22, Alexander Wilford P23, and then Jason Mumford P24 ahead of Sean Dobie. And then very shortly it will be Roxanne Marshall who rounds off all of our finishers on the lead lap, as we see the Clicks Racing driver Sean Dobie crossing the line there, P25, P14 in the silver class, and then Marshall a little bit further away. We will catch her when she makes her way to the line, but as our drivers here doing the donuts, well, that's Mo Kristad and Joe Pinder there, pleased with their performances today. Well, Pinder finishing P20 overall in the end, but 10th in the silver class and battling hard all the way. But with all the smoke that's been kicked up, I think they've burnt the tyres to pieces now as the Corey Lazarus parked up there. But meanwhile, heading away through the final 2 corners, the last driver to finish on the lead lap in this race, P26, P15 in the silver class, Roxanne Marshall comes to line, and the 24-hour Punty People driver taking the checker flag in this race will know that it has not been a day to saviour. Indeed, it has been a one of perhaps potential championship frustration after the dominance at Zolder. Well, that advantage now will be definitely cut into, albeit it won't be cut into by the driver she may have thought it would have been of David Biggerdike. Instead, it would have been the driver of what would have been instead Luke Andrews, who's going to come a long way through the silver class with the performances today. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for us to give you the race results. These are of course subject to any stewards inquiries, and here they are for round number 8 in the Porsche Cup Season 6 as hosted by UKSimRacing. Heckel Gustad taking the win in the end for Ignian Motorsports by 6 seconds almost over the over-the-limit racing driver of Haroldas Jotautas P2, and then Cameron Willesey P3, the Willesey racing driver there battling hard to be on the podium overall and in the gold class. Another silver class win for Luke Andrews, taking P4 overall, his best finish overall of the season and his best pair of results this season so far in the silver class classification. For the FR20 SimRacing Purple driver, holding off Philipp Hammer, who round off the top 5 there, and the Team Germany driver putting in a great recovery effort after a difficult start to the race, indeed showing his championship resilience credentials. Samuel Sprout, P6 of Blackout Motorsport New Zealand, fighting hard all the way through from start to finish, ahead of Ryan Walker for Satellite Racing, who fended off the other Blackout Motorsport New Zealand driver of Corey Lazarus, who finished P8 in the end, and then Alex Peregrina and Giles Phillips for Avatar Racing and Phillips GP rounding off the top 10. Indeed, a difficult one for the pair, with Giles Phillips not having the pace in the early stages of the race, and Alex Peregrina having that off track at Rivage, which cost him very dear and saw him drop almost outside the top 10 come the end. David Biggerdike P11 there, best of the rest, and ahead of what was Jack Ward, with the UKSimRacing driver and the Willesey Racing drivers both round off the silver podium that consisted of Andrews, Biggerdike and Ward, and then Glenn Humberstone just missing out on the podium there by 8 tenths in the end for ATIT Racing Team Purple in P13. Chris Cole P40 for UKSimRacing in what has been a day of battling his way through the silvers and trying to hunt down fellow gold class drivers, and Lewis Willesey completed the top 15 for Tresla Motorsport. Continue to look our way down through the finishing positions. We'd see there Alistair Hatcher P16 ahead of Sean Cranley Swash, and a close-knit battle between the pair with Steve Kershaw, Wayne Basson and Joe Pinder completing the top 20. And then we can see Craig Schill P21, the ATIT Racing Team Cyan driver, having a difficult race and battling hard with Pinder come the very end, but being held at bay. And Alexander Wilford P22 for Team Germany. Definitely the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps has not been kind to him. Jason Mumford P23 ahead of Sean Dobie, with Roxanne Marshall in fact classified as P25 there, come the finish line for 24-hour Plenty People, and Tony Bradley, the last of the finishers on the lead lap, P26, ahead of drivers who finished a lap down In the end, Emil Koopmans, P27 for Apex Missers, ahead of what was Ricardo Jimenez for Avatar Racing. And then we did have the retirees of Jack Isherwood, Lee Holmes, Joe Newman, Rob Selby, and Aaron Tressler. And that rounds off our 33 drivers on the grid, ladies and gentlemen. And congratulations to all the drivers who made the checker flag in both races. And a special congratulations to our race winners in each class today. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, we've only seen one side of the story with regards to what is the racing out there. And it's your opportunity to tell another side of the story in the fact that voting for your driver of the day is now open, and we will be very shortly posting a link in the chat, in the YouTube chat. And with that, of course, don't forget to vote for your driver of the day. The voting is open until midnight tonight. That is 23:59 British Summer Time. That's BST or Universal Coordinator Time +1, UTC +1. So don't forget to vote for your driver of the day, whether it's a driver up front, alternatively a driver in the midfield who's caught your eye and delivered a great pair of races. Do let us know by casting your vote. And of course, it does give a little bit of a boon to our drivers. But with that, the third side of the story, of course, it's on the drivers themselves. And we'll be coming back in approximately 12 to 13 minutes time for our post-round interviews. Don't go anywhere. You won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, without further ado, it is time for our post-round interviews with our selected drivers, and we've got 3 drivers who've offered up their time today. Well, we're going to start off with our Silver Class double winner from FR20 Sim Racing Purple. You know and love him in the number 59 car. It's Luke Andrews, and what a day it has been for him, and he'll be telling us all about that and battling it with his Gold Class peers as he gets ready to join me in the interview room. And then we'll be hearing from Hekon Gestad in the Gold Class, the Ethiopian Motorsport driver, runner-up in race 1, but taking the win in the feature, before hearing from battler of the midfield to creep onto the podium into the feature race in the Silver Class, David Biggerdite from DC Sim Racing. But as Luke Andrews joins me now, Luke, can you hear me?
Hello, yes.
Well, good evening to you, Luke, and what an evening it has been racing-wise for yourself. A double win at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps and battling hard with the Gold Class drivers all the way through the evening. You must be absolutely exhausted.
Yeah, that was pretty intense to be fair. I wasn't expecting it to go like that, I don't think.
Oh, indeed. And, well, with that battling and, of course, the accolade of potentially fighting for a podium in the Silver Class here, which has only been achieved by one other driver on this grid, and that's Cameron Willisey back when he was in the Silver Class in Season 4. Let's dial it all the way back to qualifying. From the outset, it looked as though you had a lot of pace out of the circuit, and it was coming to you rather naturally. Was qualifying the way you expected it to be, or was there a little bit more time out there?
Yeah, I think so far qualifying's gone relatively well for me, so I was just trying to kind of do the same thing. I felt like I had the pace to take pole if I put the lap together, and just tried to take it easy on the first one and then push a bit more in the second, and it managed to find just enough time. It was pretty close with Roxanne again, but yeah, I was happy to take that.
Oh, indeed, and taking that pole in the end by what was just shy of 0.2 of a second set you up for a P11 start on the grid. And we saw at the start of the race in the sprint, it looked as though it was a very comfortable start, and you were starting to pick your way in amongst the gold drivers. What was your goal for the sprint, given the fact you had Giles Phillips alongside you, but Roxanne Marshall and Jack Ward immediately behind?
Well, yeah, I knew I had my eye on Jack and Roxanne in kind of practice, and I knew that they'd probably be the 2 fastest people in our class. So I was just trying to put cars between me and them, to be honest, but not get caught up, in any incidents with the golds, who I obviously wasn't really fighting. But yeah, just trying to keep away from them 2, really.
Well, indeed, and gradually putting distance between yourself and them as you started to move past some of the Gold Class drivers. But along the way, we got to see you get into some rather tight moments, battling with the likes of, say, Ricardo Jimenez for one, and also making your way on past Emil Koopmans. It's not an easy circuit to overtake at the Spa-Francorchamps circuit in a sprint race, is it?
No, I think as you would have seen in the broadcast, obviously at the end of the 2 straights is a good spot, and my car was quite quick in a straight line. I wasn't running much aero, so it felt like I had a good toe on most people I was behind, really, which was pretty useful when it came to getting past people.
Well, indeed, a lot of pace on the straights, and then the cleverness in the corners to keep other drivers at bay and make ground. And towards the end of the race, we saw you battling quite hard for what was a P7 finish, and there seemed to be a little bit of negotiating with the Gold Class driver alongside you of what was Samuel Sproul, and in the end you finished in P8. Was that, I have to ask, a planned finish in P8, or were you sort of, I don't mind either way, if it's P7 or P8, I'll still be on the front row for race 2?
It wasn't really deliberate, because to be honest, my race apps didn't update, so I wasn't sure if I was in 6th or 7th. I didn't know exactly what position I was in. But I just didn't want to have an incident with him, and he got a much better exit than me. I got a little snap, so I kind of let off a bit. So I thought he'd probably come past. So I just didn't want to get caught up in anything at the end. So I just kind of let him run through.
Well, it worked out for yourself for the fact you're starting on pole for the purposes of the feature race, and well, 12 minutes of racing, we saw everybody pushing the cars hard, but you'd be started on pole in a 30-minute feature, which was surely going to wear the tyres on down. What was the plan going into the feature? Were you thinking, I've got a podium overall on the cards here?
No, it was just not die, to be honest. I was happy, obviously, with the gap I had to the rest of the silver guys, so I just wanted to get a good run up at Rouge, so I wasn't getting dive bombed by a bunch of cars, and then I just kind of figured I'd see what happened from there, and if any gold people were sort of right on me, then I'd just kind of let them go, really. But that wasn't very easy because they were all bunched up behind, so I kind of decided early on that I wouldn't really be able to let them pass that much because I'd just fall into the group and then it probably wouldn't end well. So I tried to try and keep away a little bit. But yeah.
Well, understandable and quite a sensible approach. And we did see a few moments where you started to get very close to the likes of Cameron Willowsey and Haroldas Jotautas. And I have to ask, of course, battling with the other class and trying to keep it safe and not ending up on the gravel in the wall. Is there a bit of a temptation to just try and have a bit of a battle with them, to just try and get a little bit of an edge over your gold class? Because you're not battling in the championship, but it's almost like a pride thing is on the line, isn't it?
Yeah, it's actually a situation I don't think I've ever been in before, where I've been in the class below and fighting, at the front like that, and I kind of felt like maybe I could have pushed more, but I obviously didn't want to. I didn't want anything to happen and lose out on the silver points. So when it came to kind of push or shove, I kind of just tried to let it go really and think about the silver class win instead.
Indeed, and a critical pair of double wins giving you major points in the championship going into the mid-season break. And of course you've joined us quite late in the championship compared to others who were there at Virginia International Raceway at the very start. But how do you feel going into the break now in terms of what you've been able to achieve thus far?
Well, I think that was the perfect way to go into the break really. Like I kind of identified my weaknesses from the first couple of rounds really, which were that my starts have been awful. I've qualified strong and then really struggled to get the car off the line, so I fixed that this week finally. And yeah, I think then it just kind of came together better. So, and luckily, obviously, with the disconnect last week, couldn't do anything about that. But it was nice to come back strong after that, where I felt like I could have maybe challenged for a win in that feature race last week. So it was nice to actually get it this week.
Or indeed, as you say, a nice way to go into the mid-season break and in a way redemption for the disconnect last week. And well, of course, in 2 weeks' time, we head to Le Mans for the Round 9 special. How are you feeling for the Circuit de Spa?
Yeah, it's another challenge, isn't it? Some big braking zones like this week can easily lock up and different race lengths and stuff. So it'll be have to get some practice in and hopefully be as competitive as I have been for this round.
We do look forward to seeing you take to the French tarmac in a fortnight's time. But just before we do let you go, Luke, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Thanks. I know a couple of the guys from ART tuned in to watch, so thanks to you boys. And I would like to thank the FR20 guys as well, because I used to race with Wayne on Xbox a long time ago, and he spotted me on iRacing and asked if I'd like to join them in this league, and it's obviously been a lot of fun. It's not my first serious league on iRacing, and I'm loving it. So thanks to those guys for pulling me in.
Well, that's absolutely great. You were spotted by your old colleague, and we're all the more happier for having you on the grid. Luke, it's been a pleasure having you in the interview room. Congratulations on your double win once again, and we'll enjoy the break. You've earned it, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time at Le Mans.
Thanks, Paul. Cheers.
All the best. So hearing there from Luke Andrews, our double silver winner today in what was an absolutely stellar pair of performances. And as you can see in the footage in the background, currently enjoying the tussle in amongst his gold class peers. And I think really emboldened by the performances today, redeeming himself from the disconnect last time out. And now going into that mid-season break, he'll feel that momentum is right there with him. And now he can really start to hunt down the championship leaders in the silver class of David Biggerdine and Roxanne Marshall. And well, he's got to prepare for Le Mans, and with it being a single round special, everything's on the line there, and he'll want to be as best equipped as possible in order to make it another win on the bounce. But will he be able to? That is the challenge that awaits him. But as we go from our first interview of today to our second interview, we'll very shortly be hearing from Håkon Gestad, and will the number 37 driver in the Ignium Motorsport car in the gold class, enjoying a great pair of races as well. In the fact of finding his way to victory in the feature race, and in the sprint race having a calm, cool and collected run to P2, and he really has been a bit of a cool driver all the way through, not getting himself into the most tantalising of fights, but at the same time knowing when it's the right time to push and when it's the right time to back off. But as I do believe he joins me now in the interview room, Håkon, a win in the feature, a second place in the sprint race. It's been a great day at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, and as always, you look ever cool and calm at the helm of the Ignium Motorsport machine. Are you pleased with today?
Well, I couldn't be more pleased, to be honest. Definitely some work to do in qualifying. I have no idea how how I'm getting out qualified by 8/10, but you know.
Oh, indeed. And whilst it didn't quite work out in qualifying, the racing's where it matters, and indeed, you're able to find that time in the race. But coming to qualifying, besides the 8 attempts, again, we saw you put in another one of your absolutely sublime qualifying performances to end up towards the front of the field. On a personal level, besides the time that you saw up the road, do you feel as though you got the best that you could out of the car with the pace you had?
Well, there was definitely more time out there. It was far from a perfect lap, but you know, it was a decent lap that I put in, and you know, if I could have improved, it would have been like maybe a 10th or two, nothing more than that.
Oh, and I have to ask, in qualifying, of course, these 8-minute sessions, there's no overtime, so as soon as the clock strikes 8 minutes, that's your lot, you're not allowed to finish the lap. Here today, it was only 2 laps available, and this is one of the longest circuits on the calendar, if you exclude Le Mans in 2 weeks' time. Just how much pressure is on you from the outset in qualifying to deliver a lap, compared to the very short lap at Zolder last week?
I mean, it's definitely tricky around here, considering you only have like 2 chances, and there's a lot of corners where it's easy to go a little wide and get an off track and just, yeah, invalidate your lap. So definitely gotta keep it within the track limits and just, yeah, see what you get.
Oh, indeed, and your lap good enough to start P4 on the grid for the sprint. And we saw early on in the sprint race, you keeping your cool and battling inside the podium places. It looked as though it was always going to be more of a battle for you to try and fight your way past Corey Lazarus and Philipp Hammer. Albeit Hammer had a bit of a slow start, and after you passed Lazarus, it seems as though yourself and Peregrina just ran off up the road.
Yeah, I have no idea what happened to Hammer, but he drove backwards tonight. I don't know what was going on there right from the start into Lacombe. Yeah.
Oh, indeed.
Yeah, and I don't know. I was matching Alex, or at least somewhat. He was a little bit quicker in the sprint, but I think I was somewhat matching his lap times, which I do find a little bit weird considering he was that much quicker in qualifying.
Oh, indeed. And in matching, we saw the two of you separated by 2.5 seconds come at the checker flag in the sprint. And of course, in the reverse grid, seeing you start P7 for the feature race. But that P7 very quickly saw you start to rise into the top 5. It looked as though you were seizing on every opportunity, and soon you were right up there at the front.
Yeah, I took every opportunity that came to me. I got a little bit of a scare on the start as the car in front of me just sat still and didn't go. So that was a little scary, but I managed to avoid it and get around him. So yeah, it was good, and yeah, clean and hard racing among the top.
Oh, indeed. And I have to ask, with the 30-minute race around here and the fact that the right side tyres get leaned on quite heavily in the mid portion of the lap, and the left side tyres get leaned on quite heavily in the latter half of the lap, how was the tyre wear out there? Was it something that was controllable, or were you starting to really feel it in those last few minutes?
I mean, you could definitely tell a difference from, you know, lap 1 and 2 to like lap 10, 12, but yeah, it's manageable. But it's definitely a little bit more slippery, and you got to be a little bit careful, especially coming out of the slow speed corners, accelerating out of them.
Indeed, but you were careful with it and brought home the win in the end in the feature. And with your double podium today, it does mean that you're continuing to close down the top 3 in the Gold Class Championship as we go into the mid-season break. How are you feeling with regards to your performances after the first 8 rounds?
Oh, well, it's a long way to the top. Isn't that what they say? I'm definitely trailing a bit behind after the first 2 races, but we'll see what we can do in the latter portion of the season.
Indeed, and our next round, of course, in 2 weeks' time, the Round 9 Special at Le Mans. How are you feeling for the legendary French circuit?
I mean, it's going to be a little scary, I think, considering how draft affected these cars are. It might end up in chaos, but chaos is fun too. So hopefully it goes well.
Well, you heard it there, ladies and gentlemen. Chaos is fun too. I think I might coin that one and register it as a trademark. But as we look ahead to 2 weeks' time, of course, just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a thank you or a shout out to on tonight's broadcast?
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to Joe Spender, my teammate. I was watching a little bit of the broadcast back when while I was waiting here, and yeah, he had some definitely some good driving tonight. Proud of him tonight.
Well, Joe will really appreciate that. I could see you two both doing donuts on turn number 1 after you'd reached the checker flag of the feature. So a happy day at Ignium Sport, an absolutely fantastic day for yourself. Hekon, it's been great to have you in the interview room. Congratulations once again on your results today, and we look forward to seeing you out on circuit in 2 weeks' time. Enjoy that break.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. We'll see you around.
All the best. So here and there from Hekon Gustad, our double podium finisher in the gold class and our feature race winner in what was our brilliant 2 races today from Norwegian driver. And well, Ignium Motorsport absolutely pleased with his performance. Indeed, the performance is not just himself but Joe Opinda. But on a personal level there, really noting the differential in terms of his lap time in qualifying versus the pole lap set by Peregrina. Almost 8 tenths was the delta there. I think that's going to be his focus in preparation for round number 9 at Le Mans, is really closing down the qualifying time, because indeed that qualifying could be the difference between him attacking for the win from the very start of the sprint or continue to try and chase down wins and podiums as the racing goes on. But in his own words as well, looking to really step it up in the second half of the season, but waiting to see what comes and what chaos and carnage could await at Le Mans and whether he'll be able to season it, because there's one driver who steers clear of all the danger and can bring a car home safe and sound with all the paint on it. This is the man, Hekon Gustad. But as we now come on to our third and final interview of today, we'll be hearing very shortly from David Bigadite, the silver class driver from UKSimRacing, who had a bit of a mixed set of fortunes last time out, but the fortunes are rising once again. A P4 in class in the sprint and a P2 in the feature, and found himself battling very hard in the midfield of the silver class, particularly in that sprint race. Well, as he gets ready to join me, it'll be interesting to hear his thoughts and what I think were 2 races where he couldn't let his foot off the gas for one moment. But as we do wait for the UKSimRacing driver to join, of course, we're very grateful to see you all tuning in still. And just a quick reminder, if you haven't already voted for your driver of the day, there is a link in the chat to do so. But as David Bigadite joins me now, David, last week was tough. It didn't quite work out at Circuit Zolder, and some results went astray. But today, you're back on your way, a P4 in the sprint, a 2nd place in the feature, and I think the smile might be returning to your face as we go to the mid-season break.
Yeah, I think it was exactly what I needed going into a break. Like I said, last week was tough. I let my head get the better of me, if I'm honest. I was involved in an incident. Someone outbraked themselves and hit me in the chicane, and then I let my head get the better of me for the rest of the evening, which is something that I've been working on, and just trying to stay calm and drive the car to my own ability rather than trying to overdrive the car. And I think that's exactly what I did this week, and it worked out.
Oh, indeed. And having that regrouping, if you will, and starting to get yourself back on the upward path. Well, we saw that immediately in qualifying in what was a session that was always going to be difficult because there are only 2 laps available. But in the end, you took P4 in the silver class, P17 overall. On what was a lap then in the end was only 3 tenths off the lap set by Roxanne Marshall and Jack Ward. Was that the best you thought you could get in qualifying, or was there a little bit more out there potentially?
It was probably about the best I could, but not taking too many risks. I was just trying to, like I said, you've only got 2 laps, so the first lap was very much a banker, and then the second one pushed a little bit more. But I don't think I had too much more to give, to be honest. I think, like I said, I was just trying to drive within my ability and not. Actually, I think the second lap of qualifying, I hit the wall. So yeah, I only really had that 1 banker lap, which could give.
Indeed, 1 lap in the end was all you needed to have a good qualifying session, and finding your limits there in qualifying. We saw in the sprint race some early gains and then a couple of losses, not too much progress. You started P4 in class and you finished P4 in class. How was it from your perspective in those 12 minutes?
No, it's not the easiest place to overtake in a sprint without taking too many risks, and that was exactly what I was trying not to do. I think I was in P2 or P3 at one point, and then I had a lock up into the bus stop chicane. As I rejoined, I actually me and my teammate had a small coming together, which unfortunately broke his steering. So we're not quite Ocon and Perez of old yet, arguing with each other, but it's not ideal to collide with your teammate.
Oh, indeed, I can completely appreciate that. And just from the perspective for our viewers, of course, when you have the lockups in this Porsche car, no ABS available, it must be one of the most painful aspects in terms of trying to get the brakes to unlock and then roll in the car, but also trying to keep it on the circuit. And if it goes wayward, you then got to very gently navigate 510 horsepower back onto tarmac.
Yeah, that was. I felt it lock up, and like you said, once it locks, it's very. You pump the brakes or you try something, but it's very difficult to first get it unlocked, and then second stop in time. So I managed to steer myself to the outside, so I didn't hit anybody. And luckily, there's quite a large runoff area on that chicane, but it's not the easiest place to rejoin. There's not really a safe spot to rejoin. Unfortunately, not when the cars are that close together, but managed to not ruin too many people's race apart from my teammate, which I'm sure I'll hear about.
Well, indeed, maybe a little bit of a temper down in the DC Sim Racing garage after tonight, but still staying with yourself after a sprint race which saw you make some early gains and then see those unfold backwards. Starting at P16 on the grid for the feature, again, some early charges through the field and then making them stick to a P2 finish. It looked as though the longer race suited you a little bit more.
Yeah, through practice through the week, I'd been targeting a lap time and bringing it down. I knew the lap time I wanted to go into, and I just sat into my rhythm, learning from the mistakes I made last week, where you're trying to make it back. I was lucky to avoid an incident that took Roxanne out, which was pretty much a carbon copy of what happened to me the previous week. It was somebody out braking themselves and impacting in the chicane, and that's just wrong place, wrong time. I was lucky to avoid that, and then started to catch Lewis Willissey as we were going through, and then we had a nice little period where he was faster than me in the first half of the track. I was quicker in the second half, and we it was quite. I enjoyed it, just getting into the rhythm and settling into the race and driving my race. Pretty no chance of catching Luke. He's very quick, so there was no point pushing more than I needed to.
Well, understandable. And in the pictures at the moment in the background, we are looking at you gradually catching up to Lewis Willissey as the race goes on. And speaking of catching up, of course, the results today have enabled you to make quite considerable ground on Roxanne Marshall in the Silver Class Championship. You're running in what we believe is P2 going into the mid-season break, battling hard for the championship lead, but with Luke Andrews fast approaching from behind. How are you feeling at this point?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think I needed a good result this week to bring the confidence back after last week. Unfortunately, I haven't got a drop round because with the Suzuka week, I'm in Lanzarote for a week, and I haven't figured out how to pack all of my sim rig yet in 20 kilograms of suitcases. So my drop round is that week, so I've just got to maximise every round now, especially after the result in Zolder.
Indeed, it does mean that we can expect plenty more of you from round to round ahead of Suzuka, with every point counting. And of course, next time when we do return after the mid-season break, it's the special round number 9 at Le Mans. How are you feeling for the legendary French circuit?
I'm looking forward to it. I haven't driven Le Mans in this car. I've driven it in the old 911, which is still one of my favourite cars. The old version of this was a fearsome car. So I haven't driven it in the 992, so glad I've got a couple of weeks now just to get back on the track and figure out how this car handles around there. I think it could be, with the long straights, especially along the Mulsanne and that with the toe, it's going to be quite interesting. As I think there's going to be a lot of kind of slipstream trains going on around the track, so with those heavy braking points, it could be quite interesting.
Oh, indeed, there's going to be plenty to talk about, and particularly from your perspective in the car, plenty to think about as we go racing at Le Mans in a fortnight's time. But just before we do let you go, David, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
I should definitely apologise to my teammate again, shouldn't I, for ruining his race, especially when he's in the gold class as well and he's fighting fighting with some very quick guys, it can ruin the night very, very quickly. And then yeah, just thanks to my other half again for sitting downstairs. I'm sure she'll be watching something on the TV, so she'll be entertained.
Well, I'm sure your other half will appreciate it. Hello to Mrs. Biggernite if she is tuning in currently, and also I believe your teammate. I think that was Chris Cole you're referring to. I think you'll appreciate. I do think you'll appreciate the apology, and I'm sure it'll all be mended by the time you head back out onto the circuit in 2 weeks. But with that, David, it's been a pleasure to have you join me in the interview room. Congratulations on your performances today, and we look forward to seeing you out on the circuit after the mid-season break.
Thank you. Cheers. Thanks for coming.
All the best. So here and there from David Biggerdike, your silver class driver today, who took P4 in class in the sprint and then ended up on the podium at P2 in the feature in what was a pair of races which are all about getting himself back in the rhythm after the difficulties of Zolder. In his own words, his head was not in the right place after the early incident at Zolder, really knocked him out of the momentum that he'd been building in the championship, but he's refound his footing and he's building that momentum once again. And while the DC Sim Racing driver not having the perfect evening after that contact with Chris Cole that you mentioned too, and has apologised for profusely, but you can imagine things will settle down back in the team garage, and the number 13 driver will be finding his momentum. But of course now the critical thing for him is that every round matters, as he has no drop score round. Of course all the drivers are entitled to one drop week in the championship, but with the fact that Biggerdike by default will be missing the Suzuka race round in what is rounds 12 and 13, therefore that will be his drop score, and now every point will need to be taken into consideration. So he's got quite a tight threshold to operate within, but of course he's got plenty of rounds still to go, and the momentum is building. And Roxanne Marshall may be wary of David Biggerdike, and indeed Luke Andrews has to be wary of the fact that right now the number 13 car is pushing on and re-finding its form. But as we see them battling there, himself and Lewis Willisey in the run to Blanchimont, we're just going to let that play out in the background because we didn't quite get to see this battle in the live broadcast, ladies and gentlemen. But it just goes to show you how close the competitive nature is between our silver class drivers. But then Biggerdike being able to make his way on through, with Willisey losing there at Blanchimont. But indeed, intensity of the battling ever present. But as we then come to the end of our interviews, we've heard from our three drivers today, and those three drivers were firstly Luke Andrews, our silver class driver in the number 59 for FR20 Sim Racing Purple, our double class winner. We also heard from Ignium Motorsports Hekon Gestad in the number 37 in the gold class, double podium finisher in the gold class and race winner in the feature. And we've just heard from DC Sim Racing's David Biggerdike in the number 13 silver car, picking up two top fives, including one podium, a P2 in the feature race. Congratulations to them, and indeed to all of our drivers for their absolutely stellar performances today. And just another quick reminder, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to vote for your driver of the day. Votes close at midnight tonight, British Summer Time or UTC +1, and the link is available in the YouTube chat if you do want to cast your vote right now. And indeed, let us know who's caught your attention today and who has been your driver of the day at Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. But with that, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about UK Sim Racing, indeed the whole community, or in terms of what series we run or what we do on both the real world and the virtual motorsporting circuit, we can find out all that out and more at our official website, firstly at uksimracing.co.uk. You saw the website jump up earlier in the broadcast. Alternatively, if you don't want to head to our website, you can of course head to our official Twitter, which is where we are on social media. And that is at twitter.com/UKSimRacing_. I'd also like to take a moment on the behalf of UK Sim Racing to give a big thank you to our affiliates, and those do include, of course, Swello Meda Sim Racing Coaching. And, well, Swello Meda is the creator of the Motor Racing Checklist, and his coaching can help take your sim racing driving to the next level. Whether you're looking to gain a 10th, improve your approach to the racing line, or develop your consistency, Swello Meda has a coaching course to meet your needs. Plus, with him being a multi-time champion of official iRacing series, including the 2021 PSCC, you know you're receiving coaching from the very best in the industry. We also have Race Anywhere, the provider of curated sim racing equipment aimed to only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community. Demon Tweaks, the provider of the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide, so no matter what your level of discipline, Demon Tweaks can help drive you to realise your motorsport ambitions. We also have SimLab, the leading manufacturer of high quality sim racing related hardware. As a proud partner of Mercedes AMG Petronas esports, SimLab aims to enhance virtual racing experiences with uncompromising solutions that push the boundaries of esports. And lastly, we have Amazon, the company striving to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, the Earth's best employer, and the Earth's safest place to work through the provision of concepts pioneered by Amazon, including but not limited to one-click shopping, Amazon Prime, and Amazon Fire TV. But of course now, ladies and gentlemen, the Fire will call for a brief moment as we have our mid-season break next week. But don't be worried, because in 2 weeks' time, we'll be back for round number 9. It is the Le Mans special on Thursday, the 27th of April 2023. It will be an extended feature race, and all the points will be on the line in a single race of the day. But the question is, who in the gold and silver classes will make it count and bring on home the big score? The championships are tightening at the front of the field, with the battle for the gold class championship now definitely closing up between Alex Peregrina, Philipp Hammer, and Haroldas Jotautas. Meanwhile, in the silver class, Roxanne Marshall lost a lot of points today, and with David Biggerdike and Luke Andrews both on the charge, they'll be closing the distance, and Marshall will know that the pressure is building. We'll be back in 2 weeks to find out how the story continues, but until then, have a great rest of your evening, a great couple of weeks, and we'll see you soon. For we have been UK Sim Racing. I've been Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.